Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto has his ancestors' memories part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. As the sun slowly set over Konoha, the sounds of crying could be heard coming from an apartment in the Shinobi Orphans Care Complex. These cries were coming from the topmost floor of the complex, which currently only had one occupant on the floor. Because no one else was on the floor, the cry went unheard. Inside the apartment, this lonely soul could be found curled into a ball on his bed, sobbing into his pillow. 7-year-old Naruto Uzumaki cried to himself and mumbled out in emotional pain. Why? Why won't anyone play with me? What did I do to deserve not having a mommy and daddy of my own? He continued to sob and said, why do the other orphans get to know who their parents were and I don't? Most of the other orphans were brutal in their teasing of Naruto, since they all knew who their parents were, even if it was just by their names. Everyone in the complex knew that they all had to have had at least one shinobi parent to be here. Otherwise, they would be at the other orphanage in Konoha. However, all Naruto knew was that his parents were shinobi who died fighting the Kyuubi. He had no names, photos, or mementos of his parents to his name. To the kids at the shinobi orphanage, this meant that Naruto was at the absolute bottom of social totem pole. The orphan kids were generally slightly outcast among the kids at the pre-academy school. However, Naruto was an outcast from the outcasts. Most of the children of civilian parents had been told to avoid Naruto because he was bad news. The fact that Naruto was being avoided was quickly caught on by the other kids like a head cold in a school, and more kids joined in on avoiding Naruto. The other shinobi orphans started to shun Naruto as well instead of offering him support. After all, he was bad news, which might explain why he had no names for his parents. Growing up as an orphan in an orphanage could never be described as easy or pleasant. There were simply too many children for the caretakers at the orphanage to possibly give every child the comfort, closeness, and attention that a child would receive from a parent. The caretakers ensured that all of the children got good meals, clean clothes, regular baths, expected education, and taught some discipline. But it was all so institutional and cold, with none of the special moments that make childhood so enjoyable and carefree for children with caring parents. Most of the orphans bonded with each other as brothers and sisters. Naruto had tried to form such bonds, but he had been relegated to the bottom of the heap before being kicked out of the group by the other orphans. Emotions and desires are powerful things that can drive and motivate people to do things others would think unlikely or even impossible. Sometimes these drives and goals are beneficial to the desirer and to others. Goals and drives can also be dangerous to people, both for the person wanting the goal and to others who can be hurt by it. More often than not, the goals and drives fueled by emotions and desires run a massive spectrum of results between the two extremes. For Naruto, his emotions and desires were unknowingly preparing a mixed blessing for him. As Naruto continued to cry out for friends he never had and parents he never knew, a battle was being fought in his body. This wasn't a battle between the Kyuubi and the seal imprisoning him. The war was between Naruto's body and a power that had been sleeping within his paternal line for generations and was finally ready to be revealed. Naruto's subconscious called to this power, demanding it awaken, as it would give Naruto what he desired. Naruto's body fought back as it tried to suppress the power, since it wasn't ready to handle it just yet. A headache came over Naruto, increasing his pain and driving him to more fervently wish for his unknown parents to make it all better. Something finally gave in Naruto, and his chakra started to flare. A second later, the young boy let out a bellowing, blood-curdling scream. The scream continued until Naruto fell back in a seizure. From there, Naruto continued to let out cries of agony as he had a seizure on his bed. The door to Naruto's apartment was broken down less than a minute after Naruto's chakra flared. Standing in the door frame was the grizzled commander of the Shinobi Orphans Care Complex, who had been a Chunin in the Second Shinobi War before losing half of his right leg. The commander walked into Naruto's apartment with a slight limp from his prosthetic leg and looked around for the source of the chakra spike. He relaxed slightly upon seeing no sign of enemy ninjas. One of the reasons Shinobi orphans were kept separate from civilian orphans was the chance of enemy ninjas attacking the kids in revenge against their parents. Once he spotted Naruto, the commander put his kunai away and reached for his radio. He turned it on and said, "Get the hospital on the line, Daichi, and tell them to send someone to pick up one of the kids for an emergency visit. It's the Uzumaki boy, so also send a message to the Hokage." The commander then proceeded to shove anything out of the way that Naruto might accidentally hit while in his seizure. Hiruzen Sarutobi stood in a patient room in Konoha's hospital looking down at Naruto Uzumaki, who was resting in a medically induced slumber with several IVs pumping nutrients, water, and medicine into him. Instead of a pillow, Naruto's head was resting on cloth-covered ice packs. Hiruzen never liked seeing children in hospitals, as it reminded him too much of the horror stories his father used to tell him of the times before the shinobi village system. It also brought back memories of the after effects of too many terrible battles that had been fought in his life. The Sandaime never liked it when he passed the pediatric ward whenever he had to visit the hospital. That Naruto was in the pediatric ward made things even worse for Hiruzen. He was sure that he could only feel worse if it was infant Konohamaru in Naruto's place. How could this have happened to Naruto? Hiruzen wondered if Naruto's condition had been caused by the Kyuubi, but that didn't make much sense to the Sandaime. After all, Naruto had been exposed to the Kyuubi's chakra for 10 months before even being born. He had the Uzumaki vitality, and the strongest seal to hold back-tailed beast. Perhaps it was an assassination attempt by another village via poison? But none of the other orphans had been brought in with similar symptoms, so that was a low probability. The Sandaime was pulled from his musings when he heard the sound of the door opening. Hiruzen turned to see Dr. Ryukin Ishida walk into the room. Dr. Ishida bowed his head and said, "Lord Hokage, the test results have come back. Patient Uzumaki is past the critical state of his condition, and it should be safe to allow him to wake up sometime tomorrow. Physically, it looks like he will make a full recovery within the week. However, there are some uncertainties given how unique this situation is, and the unknowns we're dealing with in his case." Hiruzen turned to focus on the white-haired medical ninja and quickly spoke in a firm voice. "What has happened with Naruto?" Dr. Ishida looked down at his notes for a brief second and then regained eye contact with Hiruzen. The doctor then said, "Patient Uzumaki has apparently activated an undocumented Kekkai Genkai that seems to be centered around his brain. We think that this Kekkai Genkai was somehow activated too early and the stress of activating it almost killed him." There was shock and horror on the Hokage's face. The Uzumaki and the Namikaze clans didn't have a Kekkai Genkai. True, the Uzumakis had been known for their unusually large chakra reserves and vitality. But those traits never showed the customary medical signatures of a Kekkai Genkai. As for the Namikaze, they had been a clan of merchants. Minato's father had been the first shinobi from the family, and his mother had been the child of an actress and an unknown shinobi from Konoha. The only reason Hiruzen had known that little fact was the fact that he was there when Minato's mother requested permission to join Konoha to become a ninja from the Nidaime, and her background had been part of the screening process. Hell, Hiruzen had only kept an eye on Minato's mother because the Nidaime had been oddly interested in her career. The Nidaime's interest in Mimi had led to the Sandaime's decision to put her son on Jiraiya's team when Minato was a genin. A second later, the shock and horror were no longer visible on Hiruzen's face. He then calmly said, "What can you tell me about this Kekkai Genkai, doctor, and why did it almost kill Naruto?" Dr. Ishida glanced at Naruto and started to explain what he knew. "I cannot tell you too much about this bloodline as we don't have any records of it in the hospital at all. All the other doctors and I have is our observations from treating Naruto through the night yesterday. The first thing that I can tell you is that this Kekkai Genkai is not a dojutsu of any sort. That was the first thing we started checking when the patient's eyes started to change. Except for the now blue within blue coloration of the eyes, his eyes are perfectly normal. One of the doctors thinks that this coloration is merely a biological sign that the Kekkai Genkai is active, similar to the bulging veins the Hyuga have when the Byakugan is in an active state. I think it's a little premature to state that with certainty, but I think that Dr. Kurosaki is correct on that matter." The good doctor was able to hide his distaste at agreeing with his annoying goofball peer as he continued his explanation. "As I said earlier, this Kekkai Genkai seems to be centered around the patient's brain. 2 unknown small growths have appeared where his brain connects to the spinal column. These growths, which appear to be additional brain mass, grew at an astonishing rate from apparently nothing to their current size in a matter of hours. We were concerned about these growths, but they've stopped expanding and are definitely tied into the rest of the patient's brain. The portions of the brain associated with memory and critical thinking have undergone extensive development, reaching a state of development more like an older teenager's than a 7-year-old child. His brain activity has also skyrocketed to unprecedented levels. The closest I've ever seen to this level of brain activity was when an Uchiha allowed us to observe him while he was copying several jutsus, and even then there was only a fraction of the activity we're now observing. A significant portion of that brain activity is in the new additions to the patient's brain. All of this growth and development in the patient's brain was producing a large amount of pressure and dangerous amounts of heat. I'll be honest, we almost had to do a decompressive craniectomy to prevent brain damage. Thankfully, our little patient inherited his family's vitality, and we never had to reach the point of prepping for surgery. The massive developments in the patient's brain have slowed down, and it looks like it will stop soon. We should be able to remove the ice packs in an hour or so. Uzumaki will probably have a massive migraine, but that is one of the reasons we're keeping him sedated. The rapid brain development is why my fellow doctors and I think that this Kekkai Genkai was somehow triggered too soon. X-rays taken of the patient's skull reveal indentations that perfectly protect these new brain lobes. We think that whatever this bloodline does, it is supposed to activate once the bearer has had the chance to slowly grow these new lobes. Based on other parts of the brain that have rapidly developed, it's thought that this is supposed to occur in the bearer's mid to late teens. However, we don't have enough information to say for sure, sir. Hiruzen nodded his head as he finished processing what the doctor had told him. Dr. Ishida then left to continue his rounds after giving Hiruzen a respectful nod. The Sandaime let his mask fall, revealing all of worry and concern show on his face. None of this should have happened. Minato should be reigning as Hokage instead of him, and Naruto should be growing up happily with his parents, maybe have a younger sibling to look after, and at least a dozen cousins from the Namikaze side of his family. This was not the life that the friendly, but unfortunately lonely boy resting in front of him should have had. If only that damn unknown ninja hadn't succeeded in releasing the Kyuubi. The Hokage had known for years that someone had killed his beloved wife, and the guards who had been protecting Kushina when she gave birth to Naruto. Examinations of their corpses had made that perfectly clear. Unfortunately, the identity of this enemy was impossible to determine, as none of those who had been killed in the birthing chamber had caught a glimpse of their killer, while Minato's and Kushina's brains had been too damaged by the Kyuubi's chakra and the Shinigami's energy for the Yamanakas to delve into their memories. Many of the ninjas who had been on the front lines holding back the Kyuubi thought that the Uchiha clan had something to do with the attacks, since no Uchihas showed up for the defense, and several respectable ninjas had seen the Sharingan on the Kyuubi's eyes. Supposition on that matter was pointless in Hiruzen's mind, since he didn't have enough hard evidence one way or another to really act. Not that such actions would help poor little Naruto. The poor boy had lost his parents and his father's birth clan, who had been wiped out that night by a stray attack from the Kyuubi. Hiruzen dearly wished he could help Naruto more, but there was only so much he could do. Having one of his kids raise Naruto would just put a massive target on the boy's back. If Jiraiya took an active role in Naruto's life, it would also paint a target on his back, as well as weaken both Konoha and the Land of Fire's defenses by pulling Jiraiya from his spy rings. Kushina and Minato had both been the last surviving members of their old genin teams, so no help from that traditional quarter for shinobi orphans. As for their surviving former genin students, none of them were ready to try and raise a child. Leaving Naruto, or any orphan for that matter, in the orphanage was never something Hiruzen liked to do. It was a wish of his that no child of Konoha had to grow up as an orphan. But as the old saying goes, wish in one hand, shit in the other, and see which one fills up first. At least with the orphanages in Konoha, all of the village's orphans had their physical needs taken care of, and they had a safe place to grow up into adults. Many orphans in other parts of the Land of Fire would dream of having it so good, and the situation in other countries was even worse. With a sigh, Hiruzen got up and started to head to the door. He turned to give one last look at the sleeping Naruto and whispered, "Try to have pleasant dreams, Naruto. I know you'll make it through this and things will get better." A few days later, Inoichi was standing in the Hokage's office, having been summoned by Hiruzen. The Jonin bowed his head in greetings and then firmly said, "Sir, what mission do you need me to perform?" Hiruzen put his pipe down and folded his hands together on his desk. He then looked at his subordinate and said, "I will not lie to you, Yamanaka. The mission I need you to perform is extremely risky, and there are many unknown variables. However, it is potentially vital to the safety of Konoha that this mission succeed. This mission will also require a good deal of discretion, even though this mission is just in the village. It already involves several pieces of knowledge that I have deemed to be kept secret for Konoha's good. Is that understood?" Inoichi gave a firm nod of his head and replied, "It is, sir." The Hokage then explained the background of the mission. 5 days ago, Naruto Uzumaki developed a completely unknown Kekkai Genkai that appears to be focused around his brain in some way. What this bloodline's abilities are, we haven't been able to determine. It apparently activated too early and nearly killed the boy. Naruto woke up 2 days ago. However, we haven't been able to talk to him, as every time he is woken up he starts either screaming in horror or jabbering incomprehensibly. The doctors have determined that Naruto's mind is still processing a tremendous amount of information of some sort. We're currently keeping the boy sedated to try and let his mind sort through whatever it is that it's trying to process. Hiruzen's voice became harder as he continued. However, this situation has gone on long enough. Naruto may be a child, but he is also the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, and cannot be allowed to remain without control of his mental faculties. There is just too great of a risk of the demon finding a way to use Naruto's condition to escape, and we have no one else who is nearly as capable of keeping the Kyuubi safely sealed within themselves as Naruto. Your mission, Inoichi, is to enter Naruto's mind, determine what is going wrong, and use whatever means you need to in order to restore Naruto's senses." A sigh escaped Hiruzen's lips and was the only outward sign of the pain the old leader was in. He then added, "By whatever means does mean whatever you need to do, Inoichi. While I want as little harm or change done to Naruto as possible, this mission must succeed. If you must, erase Naruto's memory and rebuild his personality. He's a young child, and any amnesia you might need to cause can be explained away by his illness." Both men were upset about what lengths this mission might have to go to in order to succeed, and Inoichi's disgust was not nearly as well masked as Hiruzen's. Having to rewrite a person's sense of self was not an easy or a pleasant task. Having to do such a thing to a child made the already vile act especially revolting. However, having an insane Jinchuriki or even having the Kyuubi escape was something too terrible to think about. The needs of the many outweighed the needs of the few in this situation, and if things came to it, both men would just have to learn how to live with their actions. It took Inoichi a few seconds to collect himself, and then he spoke. I understand and accept the mission, Hokage. I shall see that the mission is a success, even if I hope I do not need to use every means at my disposal to do so. He then received some paperwork necessary for him to locate Naruto and get into the protected room he was in. Inoichi then bowed again and left the Hokage in his office. The Jonin left the Hokage tower and started to walk towards the part of the hospital Naruto was in. Most of the hospital was in one central and defensible location, but there were several wings that were set up in separate locations for various reasons. The wing Inoichi was heading towards was the isolation and quarantine wing, which was naturally enough the farthest wing of the hospital away from residential or commercial areas of the village. Inoichi could have gotten to the Iankyu wing in about 10 minutes if he took to the roofs like many ninjas like to do. However, Inoichi wanted to take a good look at the village and remind himself why he had to defend it if the worst scenario should happen on his mission. A half hour after leaving the Hokage tower, Inoichi arrived at the Iankyu wing of the hospital. There was a security guard at the desk who Inoichi had to show the paperwork that allowed him entrance into the wing. Once the guard verified Inoichi's documents, he buzzed for an orderly to show the Jonin around. The orderly soon showed up and led the ninja into the main hallway of the wing. Once inside the hallway, Inoichi spoke. How is the Uzumaki kid doing? The orderly replied, good as long as he's sedated. He's still screaming or jabbering whenever we let him wake up. However, it seems like both of those slowly lessening in severity, so he might be working through them on his own. Don't quote me on that though, as it's not my field of expertise. Seems a shame for the kid to be in here. Given the boy's unique status, it makes sense from a security point of view to place him here, but we're not set up properly to handle neurological issues. They then stopped at the door to the room Naruto was being kept in, and the orderly unlocked the door so Inoichi could go in. It was a Spartan room with only the bed Naruto was on and a few 4 drips that were going into him. The emptiness of the room made Naruto seem so weak and vulnerable. Inoichi felt a tug at his heartstrings as he briefly replaced Naruto's image with that of Ino for a brief second. Inoichi took a second to close his eyes and reminded himself that he could complete his mission by helping Naruto get through whatever was causing him to be in this situation. He then walked to the head of Naruto's bed and placed his hand on the boy's forehead. Inoichi had seen a lot of different things walking in many different people's minds. Everyone's mindscape was different and reflected many things about a person. However, Inoichi had never found himself in a mindscape that was like a hurricane made out of bubbles. The Mind Walker was nearly swept away by the various jumbled memories that were assaulting him with the full fury of a storm. Each bubble that hit Inoichi proceeded to roll over him as they continued to go where the storm directed them. As the bubbles passed by his face, the Jonin was able to catch glimpses of what was inside the bubbles and was shocked at what he saw. Each bubble was a memory like Inoichi expected, but they weren't Naruto's memories. Inoichi knew that because he recognized a few scenes in the memories from his own childhood. These memories were Minato Namake's memories, as impossible as it seemed to the Yamanaka ninja. The shock and surprise of this fact caused Inoichi to lose his proverbial footing and his mental self was shoved down the wave of memories. The memories from each bubble started to show earlier and earlier moments of Minato's life. Then there were 2 new waves that seemed to branch off of the wave of Minato's memories. Inoichi was swept into one of the new waves and confronted by someone else's memories. Many of the memory bubbles showed images of Minato, but they were from a different viewpoint and not memories from Minato himself. Most of these memories seemed to be clustered together with a memory of whoever Inoichi was observing holding Minato. Once there were no more memories of Minato, the wave of memories smoothed out, showing things in the smooth, if rushed manner that Minato's memories had been displayed. A few more glances at the memories revealed that these memories were from Minato's father. The memory front came to an abrupt end with a hazy memory of Naruto's grandfather's birth. Inoichi found himself outside of the memory storm even though it still raged around him. To his proverbial right was a long front of memories that seemed to stretch into the horizon. Based on what he had seen, the Mind Walker was willing to bet those memories came from Minato's mother and whoever down the line was passing down the Kekkai Genkai that Naruto had activated. To his left was a second front of memories. Fear gripped Inoichi since the vast majority of that front was an angry red color hinting that they could be the Kyuubi's memories. Several members of his clan had been rendered brain dead from trying to use the clan jutsus on the demon, and Inoichi was in no mood to join them. Using his hard-earned skill, Inoichi willed himself above the storm of memories, making his mental body rise about the storm. Once Inoichi reached the ceiling of the mindscape, he was able to get a complete look at the storm. It was like a hurricane with 2 fronts wrapping around each other. One front had 7 different spurs coming off of one long front. Based on what Inoichi had seen from the spur he exited, Those spurs represented the memories of the parents who didn't carry this Kekkei Genkai. On the other front there was a second that was the same color as the front he had been in, and then there was the massive red spur that dominated that front. Inoichi was willing to bet that the second front came from Kushina and the Kyuubi. Where the two fronts met there seemed to be a small eye forming. The eye of the memory hurricane had to be where Naruto's consciousness was located. The memory bubbles seemed to swirling extremely fast around the center. Inoichi took a second to collect himself, and then sent his mental body flying towards the eye of the storm. As soon as Inoichi entered the outer wall of the eye, he wished he hadn't. Kushina and Minato's memories were jumbled together with Naruto's own memories. Furthermore, the memories from the night of the Kyuubi attack were very prominent. There were even a few memories from the Kyuubi itself in the mix of that night, and the hatred radiating from those memories was terrifying. Finally, Inoichi was able to force himself through to the center of the memory storm where Naruto was residing, curled up in a little ball. Inoichi looked around him, and all he saw around Naruto were memories of his parents, saying their last goodbyes and dying. The Mind Walker grabbed onto Naruto and then focused a great deal of energy into creating a barrier between the memories and the duo in the center of the storm. Naruto slowly stopped crying as he felt the constant assault of memories stop. He then looked up to see Inoichi holding onto him. As Naruto's tears started to dry, he looked at the man with a puffy, but confused face. "Who are you? You look very familiar, but older than someone I've seen. A few bubbles? What is this place? How did we get here?" There was a somewhat haunted look in Naruto's eyes that startled Inoichi. The boy's eyes had aged way too much for a 7-year-old. It was probably a side effect of being assaulted by all of these memories. Inoichi then said, "I'm a Jonin on a mission for the Hokage. He was concerned about the state you were in and asked me to check on your well-being, Naruto." Naruto looked puzzled and said, "The old man?" Suddenly, the memory bubbles around the duo were filled with ones containing memories of Hiruzen. Many showed the Sandaime as an old man, but there was also a fair number showing Hiruzen as a younger man. A couple even showed Hiruzen as a teen or as a little kid. Naruto blinked his eyes and then muttered, "Why did he send you to check on me? Wait a minute, the Kyuubi?" As soon as Naruto said that, all of the memory bubbles shifted to show the Kyuubi. Several of these bubbles were angry red and projected nearly overwhelming feelings of hate. Naruto started to shiver under the onslaught of the Kyuubi's memories, and Inoichi wasn't far behind him on that score. Inoichi grabbed onto Naruto and held the boy tightly. He then firmly said, "Focus, Naruto, focus. You can change the memories we're seeing. Think about your parents. Focus on how they felt when they found out you were coming." This was a bit of a gambit on Inoichi's part, but he figured that memories of happy parents would be the only thing strong enough to pull a child out of this situation. Sure enough, the nearly overwhelming memories of the Kyuubi were forced aside by new memories of Minato and Kushina as they got things ready for Naruto's birth. Inoichi had to hold back a chuckle as he saw Minato using the Haraishin Jutsu to quickly go to various grocery stores to satisfy Kushina's cravings in several memory bubbles. There were also memories of the couple debating what they should call Naruto, who would get to train him the most, how old Naruto could be to start training, and all the other things expectant parents talked about. A sense of love and comfort radiated from these memories, cheering up Naruto in a flash. Inoichi smiled at the memories he was seeing. However, he didn't smile for long as he saw that the bubbles were starting to get closer to the duo. He turned to Naruto and said, "You've been given a great gift, Naruto, but you can't let it get the better of you. We're in the eye of a memory storm, but the eye of a storm is supposed to be a peaceful place. Please focus on having the memories circle around you just like the clouds do for the eye of a storm. If you don't, the bad memories will overwhelm you again." Naruto nodded his head and tried to will it to be so with a great deal of stress on his face. Inoichi kept on encouraging the boy, and slowly the wall of memories moved away from the barrier that the Mind Walker created. After a few minutes, Inoichi allowed the barrier he had created to slowly weaken. Soon the barrier was allowed to drop by the memories did not rush at the duo. At the same time, Naruto's face slowly lost the stress tension. The little boy started to cheer as the last bit of stress left him. "Yes. Did you see that, Mr. Jonin? I got those memories to leave us alone." Inoichi nodded his head and replied, "I see that, Naruto." On the inside, the ninja was deeply concerned about what he had learned about Naruto's Kekkei Genkai. The basic nature of the boy's bloodline had become clear to Inoichi, although he wasn't sure on many points of the Kekkei Genkai given his limited experience with it. However, what he had seen filled the experienced Jonin with a sense of worry and dread about what this bloodline meant for the future, and especially for the safety of Konoha. Hiruzen's eyes were wide from shock as Inoichi gave him a report on his mission to bring Naruto back to normal. The old Hokage wasn't sure what he was expecting out of Naruto Kekkei Genkai, but this was the farthest thing from his mind. Naruto has all of Minato and Kushina's memories plus the memories of 7 generations of Minato's ancestors who carried this bloodline along with their partner's memories. In addition, Naruto has also apparently acquired the memories of the Kyuubi as well. Furthermore, you witness Naruto able to call up various memories at will, and you're fairly certain that the boy will be able to get better at that with practice. Fear for the village's security started to well up in Hiruzen. As Hokage, Minato had access to almost every vital secret about Konoha, and many of those secrets still played a major role in the defense of the village. Kushina also had access to many things when she was alive and had through knowledge of the village's barrier seals and early warning systems. While much older, Mimi Namikaze and her husband Kigo Namikaze's memories would also provide a wealth of still useful information on Konoha ninjas. Finally, there was Mimi's unknown father, who Hiruzen was willing to bet had to be a ninja of some importance for the Nidaime to take an interest in her career. Quite frankly, Naruto's bloodline was an information security nightmare. In addition to everything that Naruto's ancestors knew, there was also the future concern over the knowledge and secrets Naruto would gain on his own as a shinobi. While the Land of Fire was very relaxed when it came to people choosing their careers, Naruto's future had been locked in on the day he was born. A known Jinchuriki didn't have any other options to earn a livelihood besides being a ninja or maybe joining the regular army. Very few civilians would be willing to consider hiring a Jinchuriki as an accountant or as a cook. Even if Naruto could somehow get a civilian job, he would almost certainly be killed by an enemy nation looking to add the Kyuubi to their arsenal. The only way for Naruto to avoid that fate was to have the training and weapons he would only be allowed access to as a registered ninja. Not really fair to the boy, but then no one intelligent ever said life was fair. Inoichi nodded his head to confirm the Hokage's statement. That is correct, sir. Naruto doesn't seem to be able to access these memories consciously yet while awake. In my talk with the boy after he woke up, he felt like he knew those memories existed, but he couldn't really recall the vast majority of them. He was able to remember a few of the memories he summoned while I was with him in his mind, but those were just ordinary home activities of his parents. I will say this though, the exposure to the various memories and the changes in Naruto's brain seemed to have matured his personality a lot. Experience aside, Naruto talked more like a newly graduated genin than a 7-year-old kid. Thanks to his bloodline, Naruto is now aware of his parents' identity and his status as the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. Before leaving, I made sure to impress upon Naruto the need to keep these facts and any other bits of information he might learn from his Kekkei Genkai a secret. However, I don't think that such reinforcement was necessary. Naruto knows that his parents' death and the attack on Konoha were caused by a secret being leaked somehow. He is painfully aware of the necessity to keep certain things quiet. Hiruzen jotted down a few notes on a blank piece of paper and gave Inoichi a polite nod of the head. Congratulations on successfully passing a potentially very dangerous mission, Jonin Yamanaka. You also have my personal thanks for not having to go to such measures on your mission as was considered potentially necessary for the safety of the village. I will have your pay form filled out in a moment. However, given the information you've brought to me, I will be assigning you to a somewhat regular mission involving Naruto. The boy will need to learn how to use his Kekkei Genkai, and without someone who possesses this Kekkei Genkai to help him, your clan seems the best suited to help his training. For security purposes, I want only you to help in this training. This mission will also have 2 separate additional objectives. The first objective will be to find out who this Kekkei Genkai originated with by determining everyone whose memories Naruto bears. The second objective is to gather information on the night of the Kyuubi attack. These additional objectives are to be completed as soon as possible, but not at the detriment of Naruto's ability to control his Kekkei Genkai. This mission will start next week unless Naruto needs more help controlling his abilities sooner. Inoichi nodded his head and said, "Understood, Lord Hokage." He then accepted the pay form that Hiruzen quickly filled out for him and left the Sandaime alone in his office. As soon as the Sandaime was alone, he pulled out his pipe and had a few comforting puffs before he mulled over Naruto's situation. How was he to minimize the threat that his Kekkei Genkai represented to the village and the Land of Fire, while also using it to maximum effect? Briefly, Hiruzen thought about his former rival to be Hokage and what that traitor might have done. Danzo would no doubt have killed Naruto to prevent the possible security leak, never stopping to consider how useful the Kekkei Genkai was or the disastrous effects Naruto's death would have. That fool had always been too short-term in his thinking in addition to being power-hungry. Danzo had been very useful though when it came to planning out a mission or handling Black Ops. Not that those abilities had saved Danzo when he tried to undermine both Hiruzen and the Fire Daimyo by setting up his own independent group of ninjas. Danzo, and every operative unwilling to swear allegiance to their proper lords, had been executed decades ago. One thing was certain to Hiruzen as he smoked his pipe and considered how to best utilize Naruto's Kekkei Genkai. Several new laws would have to be made specifically for Naruto and anyone else wielding this currently unnamed Kekkei Genkai. The first rule Hiruzen could think of off the top of his head was that Naruto and his descendants would have to be forbidden to marry anyone who was not a citizen of Konoha or the Land of Fire. Come to think of it, Naruto and his descendants should also be barred from visiting any bordello other than the one inside Konoha. Harsh, But it would only take one time for an enemy kunoichi betting Naruto or his descendants while using a conception jutsu, and then Konoha's enemies would have the intelligence windfall of the century. While such a law would be the first of its kind, it wasn't entirely without any form of precedent. Most ninja clans with Kekkei Genkai strongly discouraged their members from sowing their wild oats, as the saying went. A few clans, the Hyuga and the Uchiha for example in Konoha, traditionally kept a private prostitute on retainer who was supposed to be the only person that their clan members went to for such services. Hiruzen and his predecessors didn't do anything about that tradition because it didn't harm anyone, and it frankly was none of their business. There were also laws on the books concerning certain clans due to various abilities they had. The Uchiha were yet again an example in that they were not allowed to activate their Sharingan in the presence of the daimyo, but then most ninjas from clans couldn't demonstrate their signature abilities in front of the daimyo outside of certain circumstances. Making any law against a specific clan tended to be dicey at the best of times, as almost every other clan would typically throw their weight in opposing such a law. Hell, Hiruzen and the daimyo's other vassals did the same thing whenever the fire daimyo made a law that encroached on any of their privileges or rights. Still, Hiruzen was pretty sure that the various clans would grudgingly allow such a law given security concerns and the fact that it wasn't that limiting from a practical standpoint. International marriages were very rare in general and practically unheard of among ninjas. Also, most ninjas spent their free time in the village and were usually only out of Konoha while on a mission. Hiruzen refreshed his pipe's tobacco as he considered the potential headache more thoroughly. In any rate, it wasn't like he needed to make a law on Naruto's sexual partners now. The boy was only 7 for the Rikudo-sennin's sake. All he had to do was work on the law a little bit at a time for a few weeks or months, and then once it was fully polished put it into effect at the opportune time. He'd already done it over a dozen times before with other tricky laws during his first term as Hokage. A month later, Konoha was woken up on morning by the sounds of combat coming from the Uchiha district. Many of the ninjas who lived in nearby neighborhoods heard the sounds and jumped into action. They started sending out calls of alarm which alerted even more ninjas to come to the district. When the Konoha shinobi entered the Uchiha district, they were shocked at what they saw. Assembled in the district was the largest gathering of ANBU in one place most ninjas had ever seen. What made this gathering of Konoha's elite operatives even more shocking was the fact that many of the ANBU had blood on their swords and had rounded up most of the Uchiha children and gathered them into one of the playgrounds with almost a dozen ANBU guards. A few ANBU were seen dragging children and younger genin from their homes and leading them to the gathering playground. Several ANBU were spotted coming out of houses with the severed heads of one or more Uchihas. These heads were placed at an obviously predetermined spot well away from the children where the Hokage was standing in battle armor with a list checking something off as he looked at the heads. When Hiruzen saw many of the heads, especially those belonging to teenagers and young adults, he seemed to slump for a split second and write the person's name onto the list. One of the ANBU noted the growing crowd of shocked ninjas and leaned over to mention it to the Hokage. Hiruzen nodded his head and then handed the clipboard with the list to the ANBU, and then calmly walked over to the assembled crowd. The aged leader pulled out all of his experience as he pulled out his pipe to project an air of complete calmness and relaxation as he took a smoke. Good morning, everyone. However, I must say that many of your personal reaction times need a little bit of work. We might not be able to use the warning system if this incident had been an invasion instead of a simple traitor removal operation. Now I'll grant you that this is a time of peace, the internal warning system was not activated, and the ANBU were focused on being as silent as possible to give the traitors no warning. However, an enemy with an inside agent could cause problems using similar methods. Hayashi Hyuga was one of the clan leaders that had worked their way up to the front of the ninjas and was the closest one to the Hokage. The Hyuga clan head was not friends with the Uchihas either as a clan or with any particular members of the clan. He even had a mild dislike for Fugaku because the two of them had been rivals in the academy, and the duo always managed to annoy each other for one reason or another outside of professional interactions. However, Hayashi was not about to sit around and watch a prominent clan get thrown through the meat grinder without a solid explanation and a valid reason for the Uchihas to get this treatment. If Hayashi wasn't satisfied, he planned to get all of the Hyugas to refuse to accept any missions not specifically requested by the daimyo. He would also pull all of the clan's investments out of the village. No doubt the other clan leaders would proceed with similar actions if the Hokage couldn't justify his actions and accusations. Hayashi forcefully demanded, "What treason have the Uchihas done?" No punches were pulled when Hiruzen dropped the mother of all explosive notes. Recent evidence has come to light and been verified that proves that the Uchiha were behind the Kyuubi attack on Konoha 7 years ago. Gasps of shock and horror came from the assembled shinobis. Hiruzen calmly continued as he had gotten over his shock days ago. An Uchiha who had previously been listed as Kia killed several shinobi and captured the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi we had at the time, whose seal had been weakened and was undergoing some repairs by the Yondaime. This Uchiha, whose name will be stricken from the memorial stone later today, brought the Jinchuriki to a specially prepared area on the Uchiha clan grounds that was used to remove the Kyuubi from the Jinchuriki. This operation happened with the approval of several of the Uchiha elders, with the former clan leader's wife informing everyone about the Jinchuriki going in for special seal maintenance needed to the seal used to seal the Kyuubi into her. Furthermore, the elders of the Uchiha advised everyone in their clan to hide from the attack to conserve the clan's strength. Their plans for the immediate aftermath of the attack are currently unknown, as Yondaime was able to take care of the Kyuubi before too much damage was done. However, further investigations into the Uchihas have revealed that the entire Uchiha leadership has been planning a coup and has been building up support among the Uchiha ninjas for a civil war. For their treasonous acts, the Uchiha clan head, Uchiha elders, and known Uchiha supporters of the coup have been sentenced to death. Any Uchiha of Chunin rank or above who does not stand down the Anbu during this purge and resists is being executed as a probable traitor. Shock and the beginning of understanding showed on the assembled shinobi. They were mostly used to dealing with Hiruzen's jovial and caring regular personality. It had been years since Hiruzen had needed to slip on the god of shinobi personality mask in front of a large group of Konoha ninjas. Hiruzen then continued to explain the Uchiha's punishment for their act of betrayal to ensure that no clan ever thought of starting a civil war. For their crimes against Konoha and the Land of Fire, the Uchiha clan will be punished as follows. All lands, monies, and weapons personally held by the traitors is confiscated. 90% of all money held in the joint clan account will be confiscated. The Uchiha clan is stripped of its command of Konoha's military police force. All jutsus known by the traitors, minus those nominally held only by loyal Konoha clans, will be extracted by a specialist and made part of the General Ninja Force's jutsu library. All of the clan heads in hearing range had to fight down a shiver when they heard the Sandaime's punishment of the Uchiha clan. None of them could argue against the harsh punishment, since the Uchihas had tried to massacre them all with the Kyuubi attack and then were preparing to try and take over the village. They would want to see hard reports of this evidence, but they trusted Hiruzen to be telling the truth for now. However, none of the clan leaders liked the idea of a powerful clan being shattered in so through a manner. If it happened once, it could happen again, and that was the warning Hiruzen was sending. Keep your clans loyal because traitors will be crushed into dust. Almost another month later, Hiruzen had another headache just as he was finishing up the last major bits of paperwork from the Uchiha purge. The source of Hiruzen's headache was the 7-year-old Naruto sitting in front of him trying to look as innocent as possible. Hiruzen looked down at Inoichi's report at his and Naruto's latest training session on the boys' Kekkai Genkai. The old Hokage then said, "So Naruto, I understand that you've made a breakthrough in accessing memories farther down your line than your grandparents." Naruto nodded his head and said, "Yes sir, Grandfather Hokage. I'm finally able to access those older memories since I figured out a trick to not call up memories of ancestors closer to me as I tried to access the older generations." That had been a major issue for Naruto over the past 2 months, even when he spent as much of his free time training as he possibly could with his Kekkai Genkai. He was an orphan. Why wouldn't he try to enjoy memories of his parents or vicariously see what it felt like to grow up in a loving house? However, whenever Naruto tried to access memories from his grandparents, he always got lots of Minato's memories pulled up as well. When he tried to get his great-grandparents, Naruto ended up nearly drowning those memories with Mimi and Minato's memories that he had dragged up as well. Inoichi had helped Naruto to realize that he had been using the equivalent of a net to capture memory bubbles from his mindscape's memory hurricane and bring them up so that he could view them. Naturally, the net also caught everything else in its path, which is why Naruto got so many of the in-between generations memories as well. Thanks to Inoichi, Naruto was able to create the mental equivalent of a fishing hook to snag the memory or memories he wanted to experience. Naruto then continued talking. "Inoichi mentioned that you wanted to know more about my family line and whose memories I have in my head. I wrote up the family tree that he should have given you. Everyone from my great-grandmother on back to the first person to carry the Ima Sophia were merchants or craftsmen, so I don't think you'll be too worried about their memories for security purposes. My great-grandfather, on the other hand, is another story." That was an understatement in the Sandaime's book as he glanced over to the family tree Naruto had made to see the name Tobirama Senju as Mimi Namake's father. On the one hand, Tobirama being Mimi's father finally answered the question Hiruzen had of why the Nidaime had been so interested in her career. Part of Hiruzen wondered if Tobirama had always known about being Mimi's father or if he had only discovered that fact later. In all honesty, the question was pointless at this date and time. Why Tobirama chose to keep his relationship with Mimi secret, if he ever truly knew for certain, was his business. It wouldn't be the first time a shinobi had an illegitimate child with a civilian that they kept a discreet distance towards to protect said child from their enemies. Sometimes these children followed Mimi's path and became ninjas, hoping to become closer to their unknown parent. The rest of the time, the children chose to pursue their own careers using their civilian anonymity to have a greater freedom of career choice than their legitimate shinobi clan siblings. On the other hand, Tobirama and his memories being part of Naruto's inherited memories was still very relevant to the security of Konoha. The Shodain might have founded Konoha, but it was the Naidame that oversaw the details that went into designing the actual village and its defenses. Tobirama was also the founder of ANBU, and his fingerprints were still all over ANBU after all of these decades. Furthermore, the Naidame's general knowledge as Hokage combined with the Yandame's general knowledge provided two very powerful data points for enemy intelligence. They would allow a semi-competent analysis team to figure out how Konoha developed during the Sandame's reign, and chart a likely prediction of how Konoha would grow and adapt. Hiruzen shook his head and reminded himself that this latest revelation didn't really change anything from a security perspective. Naruto and his descendants' pillowing partners was already a matter of national security. Used correctly, it could even be a boon to Konoha, since the fact that the Senju bloodline was still in existence and capable of being perpetuated would be a strong prestige and moral-lifting piece of news. Not that this would release to the general public just yet. There was no need to draw the attention of every assassin and big-name hunter in the elemental nations after a 7-year-old. However, there was one thing that Naruto had said that really piqued Hiruzen's interest. Naruto, you said the other carriers of the Ima Sophia. Is Ima Sophia the name of your Kekkai Genkai? If so, where does the name come from, as it doesn't sound like anything from any dialect known in the elemental nations? Naruto nodded his head and replied, Yep, Ima Sophia is my Kekkai Genkai's name, since that's what the original bearer called it when he received it. How he got it isn't too clear, since those are the earliest memories I inherited. So far, I've called up memories of a shinobi researcher being saved and a bunch of seals used to test out the shinobi's greatest idea. I think the shinobi in question was an Uzumaki, but I'm having a lot of trouble calling up those memories at the moment. Hell, those memories I'm thinking of might not even be showing me the source of my Kekkai Genkai. Basil Katsopoulos went through a lot of crazy adventures even before he arrived in the elemental nations. My bloodline could have been derived from one of those incidents. As I said, I'm having trouble accessing Basil's memories with clarity at the moment. Anyway, to get back to your question, Ima Sophia means blood wisdom in Basil's native tongue. I sincerely doubt that you would have ever heard of his language, since Basil was a merchant originally from a great empire on the opposite side of the celestial continent, well beyond the boundaries of the celestial empire. That would indeed explain why Hiruzen had never heard of the language that Naruto's Kekkai Genkai's name came from. Across the Western Sea from the elemental nations was a massive continent. That continent was generally called the Celestial Continent due to most of the known lands on the continent being ruled by a massive kingdom known as the Celestial Empire. Very little was known about the Celestial Empire given its insular nature, and the fact that most of the countries in the elemental nations didn't really care about the lands across the Western Sea. A few nations had some trading links to the continent, which mostly came through the pirate kingdoms of the Comet Peninsula, which lay to the northeast of the Celestial Empire. There was also a trade route via Moon Country, which was located in the southernmost reaches of the Western Sea. However, those trade routes did not pass through the Land of Fire, so Hiruzen's knowledge of Celestial Continent was very limited, since it was not a priority for him to know. Hiruzen then rose from his chair and said, Thank you for giving me this update on your training, Naruto. I'm trusting you to maintain an appropriate level of discreetness about any facts you might learn while mastering your Ima Sophia. Even though you won't be starting the Ninja Academy for a couple more weeks, I have to hold you to same level of responsibility as a licensed shinobi with regards to the secrets your ancestors learned. It's unfair, but then it's also unfair to your future classmates that you're going into the Ninja Academy with all of that knowledge and experience resting in your inherited memories. The Hokage gave Naruto a brief hug and then let Naruto out of the office. He then went to the desk and wrote up a mission for the intelligence department to locate Basil Katsopoulos' family tree and determine who his other living descendants were, if any, besides Naruto existed. Given how guarded most clans were with their family registers, the need to follow every blood relation, as Naruto was descended from Basil through 3 generations of daughters, and the need to keep quiet so as not to alert every other nation of the Ima Sophia, this would be a long and very difficult mission. Hiruzen just hoped that no other current or past Konoha secrets were potentially compromised by the Ima Sophia. The Uzumaki line already was a permanent curse of headaches to all future Hokages thanks to the Ima Sophia, and that curse would just get more severe as the generations went by. Naruto left the Hokage Tower and slowly walked through the streets of Konoha. The refusal to recognize his existence, and the occasional harsh glares that Naruto was used to seeing whenever he left the Shinobi Orphans Care Complex had vanished completely. Occasionally, Naruto saw a grudging nod of approval from some of the passing shinobi and some of the older civilians. The rest of the people, if they saw him at all, simply gave Naruto the same treatment that any stranger would be given. Konoha as a whole had accepted him, and that put a smile on Naruto's face. Had Naruto experienced this before he awoke in the Ima Sophia, he probably would have been skipping down the street from joy. The Ima Sophia and the wisdom it brought made this a bittersweet joy for Naruto. Naruto knew that part, a probably small part but still a part, of the reason he had been accepted by the general population was the fact that he had a Kekkai Genkai. Thanks to his now blue within blue eyes, everyone could see that Naruto had a Kekkai Genkai. In the shinobi world, Kekkei Genkai were a big advertising advantage to draw in clients besides the daimyo along with renowned shinobi and famous clans. But the majority of Naruto's acceptance by Konoha was a result of the downfall of the Uchiha. The exact details were a secret for time being, but it had become leaked that the initial information about Obito the betrayer had come from Naruto thanks to his Ima Sophia. Almost everyone in the village was in the dark about what exactly his Kekkei Genkai did. It was known inside the village that Naruto's bloodline abilities involved the preservation and recall of memories somehow. Hiruzen had also helped Naruto by allowing it to become known that Naruto's parents had been two very powerful and very close ninjas to the Yondaime. Furthermore, the Hokage had also allowed it to become known that Naruto's parents had volunteered him for his status as a Jinchuriki and that they had died from wounds suffered to ensure that the sealing was a success. Those who knew the truth about Kushina and Minato enjoyed Hiruzen's subtle play on the truth. Everything was true, but said in such a way to hide the truth. The true story that became commonly accepted by the village was one that Hiruzen had hoped for when he seized the opportunity to help Naruto out during the Uchiha Purge fallout. To the average civilian, Naruto Uzumaki was obviously the son of two unknown ANBUs who had been Minato's guards and troubleshooters. The boy's parents had died in the line of duty during the Kyuubi attack. It also became commonly known that Naruto's parents had told their just-born child the truth of the attack, knowing that their Kekkei Genkai would ensure that Naruto would one day be able to pass along the truth to everyone else. The best part of this story was that no one who knew the truth had needed to steer the crowd to this final story. It had been concocted whole cloth, the civilians themselves, based on what had and hadn't been told to them. The sound of a vegetable flying through the air pulled Naruto out of his thoughts as he rounded a corner. Naruto watched in surprise and a bit of shock as one merchant threw some of his rotten produce at the foot of a black-haired kid roughly Naruto's age. The merchant growled out, "Get out of here, you traitor spawn. We don't need your kind to try a third time to wreck the village. This is a marketplace for loyal customers only." Naruto watched in silent surprise as the kid's eyes seemed to get misty from unshed tears, and then he turned and started running away. The Uchiha crest was clearly displayed on the back of the kid's shirt, and it seemed to be a magnet for all the eyes of the surrounding citizens, pulling their loathing to the surface. All of the simmering hate and anger that the general population had directed at Naruto had transferred to the Uchiha clan with massive amounts of penalties and interest. The Kyuubi's attack hadn't been a random act of mindless violence, as many had thought. It had been an act of betrayal and a series of betrayals by a group that had been loved and respected by the civilian population. That made the Uchiha's crimes all the worse and unforgivable to most of Konoha. A sick feeling overcame Naruto when he saw everyone's reactions to the young Uchiha, as he could easily imagine himself in the boy's position. What made the situation even worse for Naruto was that a small part of him felt vindictive pleasure at the Uchiha's plight, and that fact made him ill. Naruto didn't want to paint the remaining Uchihas with the same brush as the traitors that had been killed. They were innocent of any wrongdoing. It was wrong when the villagers treated him badly because of the Kyuubi, and it was wrong now with how they were treating the Uchihas. Doing that would just make him a damn hypocrite. Despite how much Naruto wanted to not feel that pleasure, it wouldn't go away even as he balled his fists so tightly his fingernails started to draw blood. All Kekkei Genkais have a downside to them, even if they were usually kept hidden for good reasons. The Ima Sophia's downside was also its strength of remembering. Naruto remembered his mother's close friendship with Mikoto Uchiha. Mikoto had even named Kushina as Itachi's godmother. Yet, it had been Mikoto who had sold Kushina out to be killed by Obito the night Naruto was born. Speaking of the betrayer, Minato had been the one to be there for Obito throughout his career as a shinobi of Konoha. Minato had believed in Obito and his possibilities for the future even when the boy's own parents wrote off his potential as a ninja. All that trust and support had been repaid by Obito killing Minato's wife, threatening to kill his only child, and trying to destroy Minato's home. Naruto and the other orphans from the Shinobi Orphans Care Complex were led by the complex's commander in a straight line down the streets of Konoha to the Ninja Academy, as was customary for the start of the Ninja Academy's school year. Since this was Naruto's first year at the academy, he and his age bracket were at the front of the line behind the commander so that the older students could keep an eye on the newbies. Everyone in the line had the same style backpack loaded with their textbooks for the year and a supply of kunai and shuriken. These packs had been checked the night before by the kids under the watchful eye of the commander to ensure everything was in order. Farther down the line with the older students, the backpacks had a bit of variety in them based on which elective course the student was taking. As the group turned a corner, it was joined by a larger and less disciplined group of orphans. These children were from the civilian orphanage that had elected to go into the ninja program instead of one of the trade schools. Naruto knew thanks to Ima Sophia that roughly a sixth of the civilian orphans would drop out of the program in a few months to go to various trade schools. It was a sad thought, but statistically much better than the children from living civilian families of whom half were expected to drop out in the same time frame. Conventional wisdom held that anyone who could last the first 2 years in the academy would be in the military for their career. Those who weren't able to make it as shinobi generally joined the regular military forces of the Land of Fire as a Shigeru. Given their earlier training in chakra usage and military tactics, the dropouts who became a Shigeru were well positioned to easily advance in rank among the Ashigeru and had a higher chance of being elevated to the ranks of the samurai. The composite orphan group soon reached the ninja academy, where it seemed like a third of the village was trying to gather at once. Parents and older siblings were leading ninja hopefuls to their first day of school. Older students were gathering and sharing stories about what they had been up to on the short summer vacation. Off to the side were parents who had already dropped off their children and had found an old classmate that they needed to catch up with. Sprinkled throughout the crowd were the academy instructors' almost futility trying to bring some sort of order to the chaos. This almost carnival-like atmosphere always happened on the first day of the ninja academy, and Naruto could testify to that thanks to his Kekkai Genkai. Navigating that crowd might as well have been a preliminary screening test for ninja hopefuls given how difficult it was to do. Somehow, Naruto and the others were able to make their way to the ninja academy doors and entered the building. The commander led both groups of orphans to message board where they were able to see which rooms were posted as their home rooms. He then left Naruto and his fellow orphans alone, knowing that they could get themselves to their classrooms. It took Naruto a second to find his name, and then he headed off towards classroom. Unlike the other new students, Naruto didn't look around trying to make sure he was following the signs to the various classrooms correctly. A quick glance every now and then confirmed that the academy hadn't undergone any major renovations since Minato and Kushina had picked up their genin squads. Naruto was thus able to effortlessly navigate the academy and be the first student to reach his classroom. He quickly confirmed this by double-checking the list of students posted on the classroom door. The young student then entered the classroom and took a seat towards the back that would let him easily pay attention to the lesson without being the center of the teacher's attention. The young student sat in his chair at his selected desk and closed his eyes to fully activate his Ima Sophia. Naruto instantly felt himself enter his mindscape, effortlessly floating in the eye of the memory storm. Thanks to Inoichi's training, Naruto knew he had a 60-to-1 time ratio when using his Ima Sophia to access memories. That is, for every minute in here only a second would pass in the real world. Naruto then spent the next 2 hours in his mindscape trying to access his own memories. His Kekkai Genkai was recording his memories for future generations, so it made logical sense to Naruto that he should be able to access those memories as well. It would be a very good training tool for him to be able to review any mistakes he made to correct them in the future. Naruto wasn't able to call up the memories, but he felt a small tug as he tried to summon the memory bubble containing last night's dinner. That tug reassured Naruto that it would be possible for him to recall his own personal memories along with ancestors' memories. Why his own memory was harder to access didn't make any sense to the young student. Maybe it had something to do with his bloodline recording his memories? After all, his ancestors' memories were already recorded and they were much easier for Naruto to access no matter the generations. It could be due to something else entirely. As the first known person to actively use the Ima Sophia, Naruto was figuring his bloodline out as he went. For a brief moment, Naruto left his mindscape to double-check the time in the real world. Once Naruto had confirmed the remaining time, he returned to his mindscape. Naruto then sent out his mental hooks to call up his parents' memories of school. Part of Naruto was surprised that he snagged several memories as quickly as he expected that his hooks would have to travel deeper in his parents' memories to reach their academy days. Curiosity got the better of the young boy and he pulled those memories up so that they could be played. As soon as the first memory started to play, Naruto wished he could forget, or better yet erase certain memories. Inoichi and Naruto had tested the possibility of erasing ancestral memories using special Yamanaka jutsus to erase a few memories of what Minato and other ancestors had for dinner on a certain night for each ancestor. The erased memories restored themselves to Khan's after they were removed thanks to them being stored in Naruto's DNA. Ima Sophia was also a double-edged weapon since it was extremely easy for Naruto to recall memories once he viewed them in his mindscape. In most cases this was a good thing for Naruto, but not now. Floating in front of Naruto were 2 memory bubbles and a series of memories. Memory bubbles could show like this when it involved events that 2 or more ancestors had been involved. Once again, this could be an advantage by providing more points of view on an event. For Naruto it just provided twice the trauma. The memory bubbles were showing his mother dressed in a cosplay slutty student outfit and his father dressed up as a teacher. It was horrifying for Naruto to learn that his parents had actually snuck into the ninja academy for some naughty role-playing sessions on multiple occasions. Naruto was able to stop recalling those memories before his parents' memories go to the real X-rated stuff. That would have completely traumatized him. Naruto quickly banished those memories he had gathered back to their resting locations and vowed to never ever get himself into detention as he left his mindscape. The boy didn't care how many years had passed or how many times that room had been scrubbed. Unless someone used an A-rank Katan jutsu on the detention room, it would never be clean in his opinion. Much of the classwork hadn't changed since Naruto's parents and grandparents went to school. History got updated obviously, and geography had a few changes on the map due to wars shifting some borders. However, most of the core classes remained unchanged. Math, writing, and the basic sciences always the same. Poisons 101 remained the same, as did the training courses in physical training. Tactics 101 was functionally the same, but the simulation games that were played from time to time were different. Shogi had been the game of choice for tactics in his parents' day. About 2 decades ago, a new game had become popular in the academy for training, even if it failed to become popular with the general population. This training game used different markers to represent different levels of ninjas with stat lines for each type and dice to determine outcomes. Most of the kids in school hated the training game. The rulebook for the game was a third the size of their textbooks. Each phase of the game was timed by the instructors, with any possible actions not performed in the allotted time being lost. In each match, the kids would have to take into consideration various variable conditions like weather, time of day, and terrain that dramatically changed the game map. There was also the fact that they never got a standard set of game pieces. Sometimes the instructors would give the students resource points to pick their forces with different pieces having different value, and on other times they would assign certain armies act out a scenario. Added on to this was the dice rolls, which added a great deal of unpredictability in how things could go. Generally, higher ranked pieces had better results on dice rolls, but that wasn't always the case. A noted example of that was when one of Naruto's Genin squads wiped out 4 of Shikamaru's Jonin squads in a mission because of some lucky dice rolls. Unlike most students, Naruto loved the game in Tactics 101. It had been a bit difficult for him to learn all of the rules, but it was far better than Shogi ever was for teaching applicable tactics for combat. Thanks to Ima Sophia, Naruto knew that war was not something clean with plenty of time to think things over or filled with any certainties whatsoever. If you can't think fast or react to unexpected actions, you and your team were dead. Leaders often had to pick to their teammates from a limited pool of available ninjas. If they picked their teams poorly, then the mission would fail and they would likely die. A team could be returning from one mission and circumstances could force them to deal with something completely unexpected. If the ninjas couldn't adapt to being out of their comfort zone, then they could die. Before the first semester was halfway done, Naruto had become the undisputed king of the practical portion of tactics and one of the top leaders in the theoretical portion. Tactics 101 wasn't the only course Naruto shined in. The young student did very well in all of the practical courses involving physical activity. He was a naturally energetic and active kid with a great deal of determination. The physical fitness trainers couldn't ask for a better student at his age group. Often, Naruto was #1 student in those classes, and if not, then he was at least in the top 5. In the more academic courses, Naruto had to put more effort into keeping up his grades since they didn't interest him as much. However, Naruto's determination, terror at the thought of ending up in detention, and Ima Sophia helped him to mostly stay in the top 10 for those classes. In addition to his classes, Naruto was also enjoying the opportunity to socialize with his fellow students. The shinobi orphans re-accepted Naruto as one of them again once the generally accepted story of Naruto's background became known to them. It made sense that Naruto wasn't told who his parents were, since as ninjas close to and trusted by the Yondaime, they had probably made a lot of enemies. The fact that Naruto had been trusted by his parents to pass vital information back to the current Hokage also won the boy massive amounts of points from his fellow orphans, since that meant he had basically done a ninja mission before even becoming a ninja. The orphans from the civilian orphanage who were at the academy seemed to have a natural difference to the shinobi orphans who, due to school districts, they had never interacted with before. 1 or 2 of the shinobi orphans tried to lord it up over the civilian orphans, but Naruto and the others quickly put those kids back in their place. Naruto's friendly and helpful personality quickly won him more friends among the civilian orphans. The young boy didn't have any real friends outside of the orphans, but he did have a lot of friendly acquaintances. Most of the civilian students had stopped considering Naruto to be bad news since their parents stopped calling him that. The few who didn't had been part of the group that had quit the academy early on given the rigors of the classwork. Most of the civilian kids didn't really think about their parents' earlier attitudes towards Naruto, and those that did simply assumed that their parents had considered Naruto to be unlucky since he had been born on the Kyuubi attack. Most the shinobi children didn't have a big preconceived idea about Naruto before they met him. The ones that did meet Naruto in between classes, though he was a friendly enough guy. However, the shinobi children already had their circles of friends from play dates, and generally were focused on passing the academy. There was one group in the academy that absolutely hated Naruto, and that was the remains of the Uchiha clan. Currently, there were only 3 Uchihas attending the academy, and only Sasuke Uchiha was in Naruto's year. All of the Uchihas in the academy hated Naruto with a passion, blaming him for their clan's fall from grace. The actions of Obito the Betrayer, their clan leadership, or their parents didn't register to the kids. What mattered to the older students was the fact that they used to be the most respected students in the school, and now they were considered lower than dog shit, with all of their former friends and hangers-on despising them. Sasuke hated Naruto because in the Uchiha Purge he had lost his parents, his house, almost all his things, most of the remaining clan wouldn't talk to him, and he was now forced to live in cramped apartment with Itachi in a bad neighborhood. Naruto had tried once to work past his own dislike for the clan and befriend the Uchihas at lunch on the first week of school. He had walked over to the table that the 3 Uchihas had been exiled to by the other students, and asked if he could sit down. One of the older Uchihas had pulled out a kunai to threaten Naruto. Several of the other students sitting nearby saw the kunai being drawn and everything went downhill from there. The general ninja brawl that occurred as a result frightened away 10 students from the program because of the kunais and shurikens that had been thrown everywhere. Naruto was grateful that he didn't have any punishments as the academy instructors quickly decided that the brawl wasn't his fault. It did cause the boy to stop any further attempts to make peace with the Uchihas. On the plus side, it did show Naruto that his future comrades would have his back. The second year at the Ninja Academy continued much like the first year for Naruto. This was the year that the academy introduced chakra exercises into the coursework. Chakra wasn't taught outside of academic studies in the first year for safety concerns. Chakra did use one's own life force after all, and the academy instructors wanted to ensure that all of the students had an adequate surplus of chakra so that the students could safely manipulate their chakra. In this class, the shinobi children had an edge over the children with a civilian background. The reason for this difference was twofold. First, before being born, a child's chakra network is shaped and nurtured by the mother's chakra. Even a weak kunoichi's chakra reserves were far stronger than a civilian's reserves, meaning more chakra could go into developing and strengthening of an unborn child's chakra network. The average kunoichi's newborn would have the chakra network and chakra reserves comparable to a 2-year-old civilian's child, while stronger kunoichi's children would be born even stronger. Secondly, shinobi families and the shinobi orphans care complex encouraged kids to be far more active physically so that their chakra reserves would grow better. Several shinobi families even introduced basic chakra exercises a year before their children even started at the Ninja Academy. These differences weren't insurmountable for the civilian kids, but they had to play catch-up nonetheless. Naruto was struggling in his practical chakra usage classes for the exact opposite reason as everyone else who was having trouble in the class. He had way too much chakra to control with the exercises taught in the coursework. Kushina had been an exceptionally powerful kunoichi in her own right, and she also had been the Jinchuriki for the Kyuubi. That meant that Naruto's chakra network had gotten far more exercise and development before he was born thanks to all that extra chakra and the additional month in the womb than any child born in recorded medical history. It was noted in Naruto's medical files that recovered data from Kushina's birthing chamber put his birth chakra network as roughly equivalent to a 10-year-old's. Some of the doctors were skeptical of this reading given that some of the Kyuubi's chakra had been released during birth and Obito's assault. Still didn't change the fact that Naruto had an utterly massive amount of chakra naturally, and constantly holding back the Kyuubi's chakra was absolutely wonderful from the perspective of building chakra reserves. Ima Sophia really came through for Naruto by giving him knowledge of chakra control exercises that were usually reserved for genin or chunin to learn. These reservations weren't due to any legal restrictions, so Naruto wouldn't be in trouble if others found out he was learning those exercises. It's just that typically shinobi didn't have the reserves where exercises like tree walking and water walking would both help in control and be useful in a fight until they were genins or chunins. Thanks to constant practice with high-level exercises, Naruto was able to claw his way up into the upper third in chakra usage class. Chakra usage was still Naruto's worst subject for the year, and he utterly flunked the regular Bunshin Jutsu. It was only towards the end of year that Naruto got the Bunshin Jutsu, and even then he really didn't get it. He used Ima Sophia to learn the Kage Bunshin Jutsu that his great-grandfather invented and disguised the jutsu use in class. Fudging the hand seal to hide the Kage Bunshins as regular Bunshins wasted a lot of chakra. This chakra loss from incorrect hand seal was why correct hand seals were drilled into all students at the academy. Because of his massive chakra reserves, Naruto was able to create 4 Kage Bunshin with the massive chakra penalties from incorrect hand seals without being negatively affected in class. The introduction of practical chakra usage caused a fair number of students to drop out of the academy. Mostly the students who dropped out at that point were the ones who had been struggling to complete the physical training courses since they had the smallest reserves. However, the big dropout for second-year students didn't happen until near the midterms. That was when the hidden desensitization course happened. This course was to help the students get more used to the future possibility of killing by taking them in small groups to the various ranches that existed outside the village proper, but still within Konoha's Han. The students had been told it was a 2-week-long workshop to teach them the basics about fitting in for long-term infiltration missions, and that was part of the workshop's goals. For 2 weeks the students became ranchers, learning how to take care of the animals, as well as how to observe things without seeming to be observant. Then on the last day the desensitization training hit the kids when they were handed a knife and told to either kill one of the young animals on the ranch with just the knife, or they would flunk the academy. This came as a shock to the students as they had become attached to the animals on the ranch. It also was extremely difficult for a 10-year-old to hold down even the young animals by themselves, so those students who did choose to kill a youngling almost always had sloppy kills. A third of the students were thrown out of the Ninja Academy immediately when they refused to kill the animals. Konoha and the Land of Fire did not need warriors who couldn't follow orders or couldn't take a life. The kids who had killed the animals were given counseling sessions when they returned to the village. About a fourth of the kids would drop out of the program, unable to accept that they'd likely have to commit future killings if they became shinobi or joined the regular military. Still, Naruto knew that the current system was an improvement over the desensitization training his parents had. They had been given baby rabbits at the beginning on the semester to take care of. Then on midterms, when the bunnies had been brought in to rate how well the kids had taken care of their rabbits, the kids were ordered to snap the animals' necks. The chance of a student quitting the academy or being kicked out plummeted to near non-existent after the second-year butcher workshop dropout spree ended. The second-year students going into the second semester were about a fourth as numerous as they had been on the first day of their first year of the academy. Such rates were about average for the Ninja Academy, where it was expected that only 20 to 30% of the starting student body would graduate from the institution. By this point, the instructors had weeded away those with only a casual interest in being a ninja, those who couldn't handle the basic training, and those who were completely unsuited for the shinobi lifestyle. What they had left was a student body suited for the military. The question of whether the students would go on to become shinobi or have to settle as being a shigarus still needed to be answered. Third year introduced some specialization for the future ninjas. The academy hours were increased at this year level to open up time for more classes. Everyone was required to take at least one class and allowed to take 2 different classes. Those students who had consistently maintained a high grade point average were allowed to take a third class if they could keep up their grades. For those students with average and low grades, or the better students who decided against the third class, the time blocked off for the second or third class became a study hall period. Naruto was doing well enough academically that he got the option to have 3 extra classes. After looking at the optional classes, he decided to go with taking the Fuinjutsu, Kenjutsu, and Advanced Stealth. Naruto chose the first 2 classes because they were challenging courses, especially the Fuinjutsu class, with usually the fewest applications. Taking those classes would also let Naruto practice some skills he could learn with the Ima Sophia without having to reveal that aspect of his Kekkai Genkai. Advanced Stealth was chosen because it was always a good thing to be able to get the drop on one's enemies. Advanced Tracking had been a close choice in place of Advanced Stealth. Being able to find one's enemies was just as important as avoiding them finding you. Naruto had thought long and hard, but in the end the stealth course offered more advantage for Naruto. It was difficult to get more than an average grade in the advanced tracking class if one didn't have a Kekkai Genkai or access to jutsus suited for recon. Naruto could make better use of the advanced stealth courses. Besides, with his built-in jutsu library, inherited battle experience, and the Kyuubi, Naruto would be better suited in the future for elite guard and or heavy assault duties than recon duties. Naruto did very well in his new classes like he did in the regular classes. His Ima Sophia was a massive help as always, since it allowed Naruto to learn most of the information taught in class far faster. He therefore had more time to focus on parts of the lesson that might cause him difficulty and on practicing the lessons. This year was when Naruto had a massive breakthrough with his Ima Sophia by figuring out how to access his own memories. Naruto was thus able to fully review a lesson with only a minute or 2 of meditation. Furthermore, Naruto found that his Kekkai Genkai preserved parts of events he didn't previously consciously remember. Details he didn't think about, like what his fellow students were wearing in a lecture, were preserved because his eyes saw it. Every speech his senseis gave could be heard without any fluctuation in the memories, even though Naruto's mind had wandered at the time because his ears had heard the speech. All of Naruto's efforts in mastering the Ima Sophia didn't just result in him being able to access his own memories. His inherited memories became richer and Naruto could access more information from each memory. Naruto found that he didn't just watch the memories, but he could also hear the ancestors' thoughts in each memory and feel the emotions they experienced at that particular moment. With the ninja ancestors, Naruto could also sense how their chakra felt when they were training or using jutsus. This gave Naruto an even greater edge in his ninja training, making his training more like a wounded ninja going through reconditioning after temporary medical leave than a student learning for the first time. Not that it was easy for Naruto to get to that point with the Ima Sophia. He had to experience literally years of his various ancestors' lives to get that kind of control with his Kekkai Genkai. It had been difficult, but Naruto had slowly figured out a way to submerge himself in a memory without getting lost in the memory. Part of the difficulty in getting more out of a memory is that Naruto had to fully accept that all of his ancestors' lives were open to him, and that in turn his life would be completely open to his descendants. He couldn't just cherry-pick from their memories if he wanted to completely understand the wisdom and experience they had passed on to him. Living extra years thanks to his memories was not something Naruto could completely hide. Naruto's eyes showed experience far beyond his years for those who gave the blue within blue orbs a close look. He carried himself without the childish worries and concerns that children had. Naruto gained a reputation for helping other students out if they had an issue and asked him for help. Naruto didn't mind helping the other students, and he didn't try to make himself seem better than others because he could help out. He knew that he might one day have to depend on one of his classmates to save his life or someone else's life on a mission. The second half of year 3 was usually when the students really started to pick rivals, and Naruto's year was no exception. By this point, the students started to become confident in their abilities and were fairly certain that their friends wouldn't quit the academy for one reason or another. It would be very embarrassing to mark someone as a rival only for them to quit a week later. The academy instructors were happy to direct these emerging rivalries to get their students to do better in class. At the same time, they also tried to make sure that any emerging rivalries didn't become disruptive in class or worse, toxic to the future shinobi's interactions. Controlling student rivalries in Naruto's year group was successful for the instructors, with one glaring exception. The Uchiha/Uzumaki rivalry that sprung up early in the school year was perhaps the worst school rivalry that the Ninja Academy had ever seen. Naruto had maintained a frosty indifference to the three Uchihas in the academy after his attempt at peace epically failed. Sasuke had kept a lid on his simmering hatred after the head of the academy verbally ripped him and the other two students a new one, and then Itachi ripped him another new one when he got home. But that only bought 2 years of peace for the academy. Naruto used his time in the academy to forge friendships as well as learning the skills he needed to defend himself and his future comrades. On the other hand, Sasuke used his time to gain the skills and strength he needed to correct the perceived injustices delivered on his clan by Naruto's actions. Sasuke quickly learned how to mask his hate from showing on his face, but it was growing within him. The boy quickly developed a reputation in the academy as a lone wolf genius, forcing his classmates to respect him by crushing them in any match he could. Several instructors made notes of their concerns with Sasuke's attitude and actions. However, the boy had learned from the brawl and always made sure to stay on the proper side of the line, even if his actions usually had him standing on the edge of it. Itachi tried to help his brother out, but it was tough for the now newly made Jonin, then Chunin, when Sasuke entered the academy, to make enough money to support both him and Sasuke. The Uchiha Purge had whipped out all of the assets that had been in Mikoto's or Fugaka's name, leaving the boys with basically the clothes on their backs and Itachi's rather meager personal bank account. None of the usual social programs set up to help young orphan shinobi were accessible to the boys as the children of known traitors, and none of the few remaining members of the clan were about to help the children of the worst clan head in the Uchiha's history. No one could fault Itachi as a provider or a teacher to his younger brother. Itachi had ensured Sasuke had food, clothing, a roof over his head, and trained his brother in how to be ninja when he could in between missions. It's just that he had been a 12-year-old newly made Chunin who had his world turned upside down, with almost all usual avenues of support cut away from him by his parents' actions. Additionally, he had to raise his 7-year-old brother, who also going through the same situation as him. In the 3rd year, Sasuke started to call out Naruto, determined to put Naruto in his place. Naruto was not about to put up with Sasuke's attitude or pass up an opportunity to vent his own unsolved issues with the Uchiha clan. Spars between the two were quickly and unofficially banned by the teachers, who had courses that occasionally pit the students against each other because of how intense the boys' matches became. As the first semester continued on, it started to get to the point that just having the two boys close together in class made things uncomfortable for nearby students. To try and ease things in the classroom, the head of the academy quietly had Sasuke transferred to a different homeroom at the start of the 2nd semester. He chose to transfer Sasuke because he was the one who tended to start most of the duo's squabbles. Transferring Sasuke to a class that had a different schedule than Naruto's class eased the tension in the school caused by the duo. Both boys would barely have the opportunity to pass each other in the halls during school time, and they both knew better than to start something at a time like that. However, the duo's rivalry did not end, since 3rd year was when the academy started publicly publishing the students' grades. This was to encourage those doing poorly to work better and know who they should go to for study help. For the better students, this was to give them a goal to become the number 1 student for the year. Naruto's and Sasuke's were always next to each other near the top of the list, and the duo were constantly swapping who was doing better than the other each time the list was updated. Once again, it was the start of the school year at the Ninja Academy, and the assembled crowd was as big as it always was. Among the throng of students were 2 4th-year students who had made their way to the posted class lists. One of the girls said to the other, "Hey Ino, do you think we'll be in the same homeroom this year?" A girl with short blonde hair and wearing a purple dress turned to look at her friend. "I don't know, Sakura. We were together in 1st year and 3rd year, so hopefully we'll be together for another year." Ino's voice changed to a teasing tone as she looked at her best friend with her short pink hair and sporting a red dress. "After all, as a civilian student you'll need my help to keep your high standing in class. That large forehead of yours might help with all of the bookwork. However, it takes more than smarts to be a great kunoichi like me." Ino and Sakura had been friends ever since the two of them had met on a playground years ago when they were little kids. The two girls' friendship was a bit odd back in first year at the academy since Ino came from a shinobi clan while Sakura was civilian born. Sakura's father had been part of the shinobi forces, but he had only been an average chunin before enemy poison forced him to take an honorable discharge early in the third shinobi war years before she had been born. He had been the first shinobi from his clan and Sakura's mother came from a long line of merchants. This made Sakura a civilian-born student, a bet one with higher social standing in school since she wasn't a pure civilian student. There were different expectations and standards expected of shinobi depending on their background in both the academy and mission results. This wasn't a form of discrimination as the shinobi forces were very meritorious, allowing anyone to raise to the rank their skills and abilities could carry them. It was simply general trends that had been observed since the creation of the hidden villages. Lowest on this totem pole were the pure civilian background students. The vast majority of those applicants washed out of the academy, and those that did make it into the shinobi forces typically only rose to the rank of chunin. There were a few jonin from pure civilian backgrounds, but they were rare. This did not mean it was impossible for a shinobi from a pure civilian family to become a legend, as Jiraiya of the Sannin showed. It was generally assumed that this trend was due to the fact that these shinobi started off with a relative chakra handicap compared to their compatriots, and less focusing on the shinobi arts from their families. Next on the totem pole came the civilian children who had a ninja or two in the family, especially those with a parent who had been a ninja or a close relative like an aunt or uncle. These students typically got more support for training at home to help with lessons at the academy. If their mothers had been kunoichis, then they usually didn't have a chakra handicap that those with civilian mothers had. It was more common for the shinobi parent in this category to be the father since most kunoichis tended to marry shinobis. Far fewer of these civilian students left the academy thanks to the support of ninja family member, and they were more likely to go further in their ninja careers. At the top of the totem pole were the students from shinobi families and shinobi clans. In terms of performance expectations and career progress, the two groups were identical. Children from shinobi families and shinobi clans typically had a more developed chakra system thanks to their mothers' more powerful chakra systems as kunoichis. The children also had the support and early training that the families and clans employed in child rearing, which set these kids up to excel as shinobi. It was a good thing too that children of shinobi families and clans generally did well as shinobis since they were pretty much locked into that career path. Family honor, and the general need for the shinobi skills to protect themselves from those seeking vengeance over someone a family member had killed on a mission made it extremely difficult for these children to leave the shinobi forces or the regular military. Those few who had left the military life completely typically became trapped inside the village, unable to leave for fear of being killed by those wanting vengeance that could get them outside the village's protection. The difference between a shinobi family and a shinobi clan was one of age and prestige. The shinobi families had been rare in the Warring States era, but blossomed under the hidden village system as shinobi with civilian backgrounds got together and started families. The shinobi clans were the old blood of the shinobi world, with the clans having been employed as shinobi longer than most could remember. Of the two shinobi subsets, the families were a distinct minority compared to the clans. This disparity had a simple explanation. Talented shinobi from civilian backgrounds or shinobi families starting out tended to get absorbed into the established shinobi clans via marriage. This tendency was an old one, harkening back to the Warring States era when it wasn't unheard of for shinobi clans to train orphans that had caught a leader's eye for one reason or another, and then have the orphan marry into the clan as an adult. Sakura quickly fired an insult back at Ino, unwilling to just back down at the childish jab at her parents. Like you're one to talk, Ino, I consistently scored higher than you last year. Resting on your ancestors' laurels just makes you suited to get roasted. Hope you like the taste of apple in your mouth when they cook you up. Given Ino's name, it was a pretty common insult in the academy to compare the bossy girl to a roasted pig. Ino let out an annoyed snort and turned away from Sakura for a moment, silently conceding their little verbal spar. After a moment she returned her gaze to board with the posted classrooms and the students in each class. Smiles appeared on both girls' faces when they saw their names in the same classroom. They then turned to face each other and grinned at that simple joy. The pink-haired girl then put a finger to her chin and muttered, I wonder who else will be in our class and if we know them? Ino joined Sakura with a questioning look on her face, and then both girls turned to look at the rest of their classes list. Most of the names were familiar to the girls, having had 1 or 2 classes with the people that would be sharing their homeroom over the previous 3 years. One name stood out to Sakura and she paused when she read it on the list. Hey Ino, it looks like we have Naruto Uzumaki in our homeroom. Didn't you have him in advanced stealth last year? Sakura had never had any classes with Naruto, and only occasionally crossed his path in the academy's hallways. All she knew about the boy was hearsay, and she was curious about the only person in homeroom she was completely certain she didn't know. With a nod of her head, the blonde-haired girl answered her friend. Yes, I did. He's a friendly and confident guy, usually with a smile on his face. Always seemed pretty quick on the uptake in class. If Naruto didn't get what we covered in class, which was pretty rare, then he always got it by the time he showed up for the next class session. He didn't rub in how well he was doing, which is surprising for a guy, and he usually was helping some of the other students in class that were having trouble. Sakura nodded her head, and then the two girls started walking to their classroom. As they rounded the corner, Sakura asked, "So did we get the better of the two for homeroom?" Everyone in their year knew about the Uchiha/Uzumaki rivalry. How could they not when the boys had been shifted mid-year so that they weren't in the same classes? Ino shrugged her shoulders and adjusted her book bag. "It's hard to say on that one, Sakura. I had Sasuke as a fellow student in Poisons last year. On the look scale, Sasuke beats Naruto hands down with his bad boy image. Naruto's looks aren't too shabby if you can get past his eyes. There's just something creepy about those blue within blue eyes and how they look like they've seen far too much than they should. However, Naruto is much friendlier, helpful, and cheerier than Sasuke. There's also the fact that Sasuke is too full of pride over his clan, their Kekkei Genkai, and doesn't tolerate disrespect on those fronts. Rather pathetic given that his parents, and most of his clan, were nothing more than filthy traitors." The girls then changed subjects to some of the new articles they had read in a fashion magazine that helped Kunoichi modify civilian clothes for combat. This new subject kept the girls talking as they finished their trip to the classroom and occupied their time until the teacher showed up. The homeroom instructor was a chunin named Irika Yumino who hit the ground running with a refresher lecture on using chakra to enhance one's physical abilities and the various limitations that this involved. Fourth year seemed to fly by for Naruto and his classmates. Soon enough, the 2-day-long final testing was upon them. The first day of testing covered all of the bookwork for the students, and was quite exhausting for all of the students. Even Naruto, with his seemingly unlimited energy, and the ability to stretch time out to think by going into his mindscape, was exhausted after the last test was done on the first day. The next day was pure practical testing, and the first test on the list for the day was general physical fitness. Kiba was complaining as the class stood in the drizzle waiting for their tester to show up. "What the hell, man? Why are we doing all of these tests in the rain? It was a gorgeous day yesterday when they locked us all inside with the written tests. If only someone had paid attention to the weatherman, we could have done the practicals yesterday in good weather instead of in the mud." Several of the other students mumbled in agreement, and a couple of the girls started to complain about what the drizzle was doing to their outfits. Naruto stepped out of line and turned to look at his classmates before speaking up. "Quit complaining about the weather. I joined the academy to become a shinobi, and I thought that all of you did as well. Otherwise, you wouldn't have lasted these past 4 years here at the academy. It sucks that we're taking this test in the rain, and I wish we had the weather from yesterday. However, being a shinobi means doing a mission even when things don't go your way. No one says to the Hokage, 'I can't take a mission today, sir, because it's too cold outside or it's raining.' They just buckle down and do the mission. We just get to prove that we can do so too earlier than most ninjas. So what do you say we give all of the previous classes who did these tests in good weather a big middle finger by beating their records with a minor handicap?" Up on the roof, the academy headmaster Rashi looked down on the assembled students who were fired up from Naruto's speech. A small grin appeared on Rashi's face through his white beard as he looked at the proceedings. The headmaster turned to look at his two chunin companions and said, "Spirited bunch this year. Letting the weather get to them is not going to work anymore after that speech, so you might as well get started on the testing." The two chunin nodded their heads and used the Shunshin Jutsu to disappear from the rooftop. One of the chunin appeared in front of the students and said, "Well said, student Uzumaki. Now get back in line so that the first practical test can begin." Naruto quickly returned to his place in the group of students, and then the chunin continued to speak. "This is a test of your physical fitness to see if you meet one of the basic requirements to be a shinobi. Turn your attention to the academy's basic PT ground." Every student did so and noticed the changes in the training ground setup. There were hurdles of different heights set up at random intervals on the track surrounding most of the training ground. Inside the track course were a series of monkey bars, concrete tubes, paths of buckets, and a 10-foot wooden wall with several lengths of rope on one side. Everyone noticed that there was enough of each obstacle to match the number of lanes on the track. There was a large ramp near the track with a matching ramp on the other side of the track. Orange cones were then set up from the ramp in a path leading to the academy's pool with balance beams set up at the halfway point. Again, there were enough balance beams for each path to have one beam. The chunin then spoke up after he gave the students a chance to look at the course. "Your test is as follows. When I call your name up, you will get in a lane on the track. Once I say go, you will make 3 laps around the track. You will then immediately proceed to the inner course where you will use the monkey bars for your lane, crawl through the concrete tubes, step through the lane of buckets, and then use the rope to climb up the wall, which you will then jump off of to land on the other side. Note that hitting any hurdles on the track, skipping any bar on the monkey bars, or not stepping in any of the buckets for your row will result in a time penalty added onto your final score. After you have landed from the wall, you will run up to the ramp and jump across the gap created by the track lanes to the companion ramp. You will then proceed along the marked lanes to the academy pool while making sure to cross the length of the balance beam when you come to it. Finally, when you get to the pool, you will dive in and swim the length of the pool underwater until you reach the other side and ring the bell set up to indicate you have completed the course. Massive time penalties will be given to anyone who rises to the surface to breathe while swimming and will be noted by my companion, who will be recording your unmodified time on the course. Passing this test requires a final time score of 15 minutes or less. Naruto waited for his turn to come up, which was an hour later on the 5th round of testing. He took his place on the track, ignoring the fact that he was soaked to the bone, and kept focused on what he was about to do. When Naruto was given the signal, he took off like a bat out of hell down his course. The other people on the track with him were only given a periphery acknowledgement. Their results did not matter at the moment. What mattered right now was him completing this course correctly and quickly. Naruto made his way through the track course quickly, making sure to keep track of his laps while avoiding the hurdles on the track. He then proceeded to the monkey bars, where he made sure to grab each bar even though he could do them 2 at a time. The tube and the buckets came next, and they had become filled in mud by this point when Naruto handled those parts of the course. Naruto took 3 seconds when he got to the wall to remove most of the mud from his sandals before scaling the wall. Naruto knew that there was a hidden time penalty for anyone who used chakra to walk up his wall, as this was a test of one's physical abilities. It just wasn't talked about since few academy students would know the technique. Those 3 seconds proved a valuable investment, as Naruto quickly got over the wall, while his fellow students did not get over the wall so easily. Jumping over the track on the ramps wasn't a problem for Naruto with the bit of a run he was able to get. He then jumped onto the balance beam, taking care not to step where the water had made the beam too slick. Judging from the ground around the balance beam, some of the other students who had gone before him hadn't been careful and had fallen off of the beam. Once Naruto got off the balance beam, he proceeded the rest of the way to the school pool. When he got to the pool, he took a deep breath and made a running dive into the pool. Naruto hurriedly swam under the water, making sure to keep several inches below the surface to avoid the time penalties. He reached the other end of the pool just as his lungs were starting to complain from holding his breath, and quickly rang the bell. The other Chunin examiner noted Naruto's time on his chart and said, "Get out of the water and head to the locker room. You can change in there and then report to the gymnasium for taijutsu testing." Like most academy students, Naruto knew how to take a 3-minute shower and got himself dressed quickly afterwards. Naruto immediately headed from the locker room to the gymnasium, with only a minor stop to grab a power bar and energy drink that was set up on a table for the students along the path from the locker room to the gym. As he walked, Naruto ate the power bar and washed it down with the energy drink to replenish what he had lost from the physical fitness test. He threw out the used wrapper and the empty bottle in a trash can at the gym door before entering it. Once in the gym, Naruto was sent to the bleachers where earlier takers of the physical fitness test were sitting with the last members of the class that started on the taijutsu testing. Judging from the time limits on the taijutsu matches, Naruto figured it would be another hour before his taijutsu testing would occur. Then it would be on to genjutsu testing. After lunch there would be a late lunch/hidden poison recognition test. "Thank you, Grandfather Kigo, for getting that little addition to the practical lineup," was Naruto's sarcastic thought about the hidden test. At lunch, each student would randomly grab one pre-prepared lunch tray to eat, and each tray had a number on it. The number let the lunch personnel, who would be Chunins in disguise, know what food item or utensil had been poisoned and what the poison was. None of the poisons used were fatal or caused long-lasting problems. However, any student who failed this test by either failing to detect and avoid the poison or failed to identify what they had been poisoned by and get the proper antidote would have an extremely bad time for the rest of the day. Most of the failures of this test would have to finish their practical exams tomorrow in a special makeup session, since their poisoning would make them unable to continue the testing today. Even without Kigo's memories, Naruto could understand the logic behind his grandfather's changes to the poison practical, and why it had been changed by Hiruzen. Before Kigo's suggested change up, the poison practical had involved the students simply walking down a line up cups with a few filled with poisons and most filled with colored water. They were supposed to identify which cups had the poisons and what the poisons were. The test never tested the students' abilities in real-world situations and was practically the theoretical poison test repeated. This test made sure that the students had absorbed their lessons in a controlled, but still real manner. The next test on Naruto's class's rotation after lunch was shuriken and kunai usage. In that test they'd have to show competency in throwing the weapons and in maintaining the weapons. Being able to use the weapons wasn't much good if you couldn't keep them in battle-ready condition out in the field. After that would be the ninjutsu test, which consisted of kawarimi, bunshin, henge, and an optional extra jutsu for extra credit. The ninjutsu test would be the final test of the day. The extra courses had their last day of class for testing in those courses. Getting everyone tested would be nearly impossible otherwise for scheduling purposes. Naruto was pulled from his musings when Kiba plopped down on the bench next to him. "Man, Naruto, that physical fitness test was brutal. It seemed like something straight out of my sister's threats. That comment earned the prankster king of the class a chuckle from Naruto. If that's the case, Naruto started to tease his friend, then you'd best prepare to be here again next year for the Academy Kiba. After all, aren't you counting on the practicals to graduate this year? Kiba responded to Naruto's teasing by giving the boy the finger. Shut up, Naruto, Kiba eagerly shot back. I don't have a Kekei Genkai like you that lets me recall every boring fact the instructors tried to tell us under a minor hypnotic genjutsu. Besides, I also had to spend an additional half-hour standing in the mud and the rain before I could take my test. If they just did the tests in alphabetical order, you'd be sitting in my place. We didn't have the tests in alphabetical order because in real life things are not so organized, Kiba. If we did take the tests in alphabetical order, then the seating arrangements on the bleachers would be different due to different people choosing when to sit at different times. You'll have to get Shikamaru or Shino to calculate the odds that I would actually be sitting in that spot on the bleachers. I just know that they'd be extremely low. Sakura probably could calculate the odds as well, but I seriously doubt that she'd help you after you turned her hair lime green. Once Naruto shut Kiba down, the duo quieted down and proceeded to observe the other students on the bleachers. Kiba was looking at the girls being tested, hoping to see a panty shot. Naruto was looking at the girls as well, but not for the reasons Kiba was looking. Ima Sophia took all of the mystery out of girls for Naruto. They were still as confusing as all hell to Naruto, even with the ancestral memories, since trying to go in depth with the memories of the opposite gender gave him a massive headache. Naruto had written that off as a side effect of men and women having different brains. The blonde student's interest in his female classmates was over who would graduate, and who of those would remain in the shinobi forces. Girls were naturally more flexible and generally had better chakra control than boys at the cost of being physically weaker and typically having lesser chakra reserves. Add in the fact that a lot of girls became enamored with looking beautiful at this age, whereas most boys wanted to be awesome fighters, and you get the typical 2-to-1 gender ratio. There were a couple of girls that Naruto judged would not be getting their headbands this year. Additionally, there were a fair amount of girls who would rate passing the academy exam, but were unlikely to pass the Jonin's final exam. Who knew which of them would choose to take the remedial training and who would choose to join the reformed police force? Joining the Ashiguro wasn't really an option for failed kunoichi unless they wanted to be in a purse support work like supply or field medic. As Naruto's eyes scanned the girls, his eyes landed on Sakura Haruno and his eyes narrowed slightly. She was one of the girls that Naruto judged had a good probability of passing the Jonin's final. Naruto didn't know too much about her other than the fact that she routinely got good grades in class and came from a civilian background. A look at the girl showed that she was physically cute and had the potential to become attractive when she grew up. What bugged Naruto about Sakura was the fact that every time he touched her, either in a spar or just accidentally bumping into her during school, he felt a quick feeling of something. The feeling was faint and disappeared very quickly, but it happened every time they touched. Naruto knew he wasn't feeling a crush thanks to Ima Sophia. He could easily see himself thinking the feeling was a crush if he didn't have his ancestral memories to compare what an actual crush felt like. After another second, Naruto moved his eyes to the next girl and continued his guessing game. Hiruzen came to the Ninja Academy the day after the practical finals and headed to the headmaster's office. Inside the office was Headmaster Rashi, who was wearing a turtle shell while busy at work with a bunch of papers on his desk. A small smirk appeared on Hiruzen's face for a few seconds as he noticed the sweat on his friend's bald head. Having a full head of hair was something the Hokage loved to hold over the headmaster when the friends were in a joking mood. Rashi piped up as he pulled a book from his shelf into his hand with an invisible chakra string and started to open it. Yes, Hiruzen, I know I'm late in sending in my reports on the latest batch of graduates with the team selections for you to rubber stamp. We happen to have a good crop this year, so I'm expecting the daimyo's tithe to rather slim this time. The daimyo's tithe was a polite way to refer to those who passed the academy test and ended up joining the Ashiguro. Hiruzen pulled out his pipe and asked, if the tithe is small, then what is the issue? I know that this year had the highest graduating percentage in a decade. However, I don't see why the additional paperwork would cause you to be researching this heavily. The headmaster put the reference book down and shot his boss a nasty glare. He then shot back, don't tell me you forgot about Team Composition Directive 13 that you issued 3 months ago? I agree that specializing our genin teams too much is dangerous, but it means that I've had to create new plans out of whole cloth instead of recycling the old patterns. That leads me to my issue with Team Composition Directive 1 and the headache that the Uchiha and the Uzumaki created for me. The Hokage raised an eyebrow and asked, why would either Naruto or Sasuke being the rookie of the year create a major issue? They've probably got different strengths, but at their level of development it would not make much of an issue for the team composition. Besides, it's not like that title actually means anything after the kids graduate. During the rare break times in the office, Hiruzen would use his globe to observe the students in the academy. It was relaxing to see the next generation hard at work learning, and it let him be somewhat aware of his future subordinates. Sasuke and Naruto took their training seriously and were in the top bracket of both skill and conditioning for their age group. Hiruzen was fairly confident that either boy would be able to kill a full-grown bandit or a small group of bandits without much issue. Any concerns about the boys freezing in combat would be put aside once they handled the final initiation into being a ninja, which happened a month after the Jonin's final testing of the Genins to be. The final initiation simply involved the new Genins each executing a condemned criminal that was shipped to Konoha from the daimyo's gallows. Failing to complete the final initiation wouldn't result in a Genin being kicked out of the shinobi force. However, the Genin in question wouldn't be allowed to advance past D-rank missions and support work inside the village until he or she proved that they wouldn't freeze up in possible life or death situations. Given Sasuke's experience with the Uchiha Purge and Naruto's extra memories, Hiruzen figured that both boys wouldn't have a real problem with the final initiation. Rashi quickly explained to his commander and friend. Those two are the most driven students this year, and they are within a hair's breadth of each other in terms of academy rankings. In their actual abilities, I have to personally rate Naruto as the better ninja. Sasuke's extremely good, but he also played the academy's ranking system a bit. Unlike Naruto, Sasuke only took 2 extra courses, knowing that we only used the third course's grades possibly replaced the scores of the class they scored the lowest in. It's there to give 1 extra skills as a genin, but it's unfair from a grading perspective for the better students to have a chance to get further ahead in their GPAs. Naruto focused on using the academy to learning the most skills he could to help him in his later career. Furthermore, the question of which one of them deserves the title of Rookie of the Year is coming down to a ruling I need to make on the boys' ninjutsu tests. Sasuke did the basic 3 jutsus flawlessly and executed a wonderful Gakkaku jutsu. Naruto preformed the basic 3 jutsu, substituting the Kage Bunshin in place of the regular Bunshin without any of the examiners noticing. It's kind of pathetic that none of the instructors here have caught on to Naruto's little ruse. For his extra jutsu, Naruto demonstrated his own creation of the Kusa Saban Jutsu. It's a very innovative and simple jutsu that lets Naruto temporarily give blades of grass the strength and hardness of steel Saban. The Kusa Saban Jutsu ends about 20 seconds after the blades of grass leave Naruto's hands. Hiruzen stroked his beard as he listened to Rashi's dilemma. That's quite a conundrum that you have on your hands, Rashi. Naruto's jutsu sounds extremely useful and practical, but from your description I would have to rate it as a D-rank jutsu. Rashi nodded his head. I think you see my dilemma. On the one hand, I have a talented student who was able to flawlessly execute a C-rank jutsu that is beyond the grasp of most of his peer group at this time. On the other hand, I've got a student that was actually able to really hide and not just have the Chunins humor him, a B-rank jutsu as an E-rank jutsu, and create his own jutsu. The academy rules don't say anything about a student inventing their own jutsu because usually don't start on jutsu creation until they're Jonins. By the book, Sasuke should get the award, but Naruto obviously has the edge over Sasuke if he was able to do just one of the things he pulled on the test. I'm at my wit's end on this issue and almost at the point of joining my Taijutsu happy nephew and running around the village on my hands just to get away from it. This was serious indeed, as it was well known among the older generation that Rashi did not like the fact that his sister had married Daimato and found his nephew Guy to be very annoying. It didn't stop Rashi from asking Guy to sign the turtle contract. Hiruzen then decided to help his friend make his decision. If Sasuke should have the title according to current regulations, then he should get the title Rookie of the Year. However, I think Naruto should quietly be given an award for discovering points in the academy's grading criteria that need to be revised, along with showing where a few of the instructors have gotten lax in their training. Since there is no title for such an award, why don't we stick with a simple cash reward? That extra 700,000 ryo in the school budget that the instructors were asking to use to renovate the teacher's lounge should do in my mind. Rashi chuckled and replied, that sound good in my book, Hiruzen. 700,000 ryo is a good chunk of change, but not absurd, for a genin to earn on some good missions. Besides, if a student can honestly pull one over on a Chunin instructor, then the instructor is obviously too lax in their own training to rate extra luxuries. The following Monday after graduation, all of those who passed the academy test came back to the Ninja Academy to be assigned to their genin squads. Naruto was wearing a black long-sleeved shirt with an orange zipper and dark orange long pants. There was a red ring of fabric on the left arm of Naruto's shirt that hid several seals containing different supplies. On Naruto's right leg was a kunai and shuriken pouch positioned to be in easy reach for him. His shirt had the Uzumaki swirl on the back in a prominent manner, and this was partly obscured by the ninjato strapped to his back. Thanks to the loose manner he was wearing his shirt, Naruto belt with its hidden lockpick set, ninja wire, and seals with additional supplies was obscured from sight. The belt itself was a special order belt from a ninja store and was rated to double as a garrote even if an enemy used rank C chakra enhanced strength according to the Taijutsu assessment scale to try and break the belt. Finishing Naruto's outfit was his headband proudly worn on his forehead. Once Naruto got to the academy, he headed to the gymnasium with the rest of his fellow students. The number of graduates this year was large enough that they couldn't fit everyone in a single classroom, not even a classroom for the first-year students. Naruto was one of the early birds and headed for one of bleachers in the back that were set up for the students. He then spent the next 15 minutes watching as the rest of the graduates made their way to the gym. Most were very familiar to Naruto as either friends or people he had been in several classes with. A few others were only vaguely familiar to Naruto as acquaintances he only passed in the hallway from time to time. Naruto could see why the graduation was held in the gym when the 84th graduate entered the room, followed shortly afterwards by Headmaster Rashi. With 28 possible new genin teams, Konoha would be getting a rather large infusion of new ninjas even if only half of the teams passed the Jonin's final test. Naruto knew that odds of such a low rate of final genin were very low. It was a popular prank among Jonins to tell their new teams that each only had a 33% chance of succeeding on the final. Since the tests were only ever passed as a team, 3 separate 33% odds added together gave the team a 99% chance of passing. On average, 70 to 80% of the academy graduates would pass the Jonin's final test of teamwork. From what Naruto could remember, the highest percentage of a class to pass the Jonin's test was 3 years before Minato became a Jonin instructor with the record of 96%. The lowest ever was a 53% back during the latter half of the Shodai's reign. That low graduation rate was partially due to sabotage on the part of one of the academy instructors. Hashirama sentenced that saboteur to 400 lashes in public over a 5-day period. Rashi took the set-up stage facing the bleachers and spoke at his former students, while politely ignoring the stares of those who didn't know that the headmaster liked to wear a turtle shell-shaped weight on his back. Congratulations on graduating, my former students. Regrettably, there are far fewer of you here than there were back when you all started at this fine institution 4 years ago. The path of the shinobi is not an easy or forgiving path for those who choose to walk it. This profession of ours involves pain, suffering, sweat, and blood while offering us only the next mission as a reward for success. Look around you to the people sitting on the bleachers with you. These are some of your brothers and sisters in arms. Any issues or complaints that you had against anyone in this room while you were studying in the academy will be left here in the academy for all time. The only thing that is standing between you and a new career as earned fillings in your family shrine are the other shinobi on the force. In a minute I will be letting you know who your fellow genin teammates are, and I can guarantee that all of your teammates are here in this room. These are the people who you will be counting on to watch your back in a fight or on patrol, just as they will be counting on you to do the same for them. Remember your training and make sure to keep it up. Your training is the greatest weapon in your arsenal and the second best thing to ensure you stay alive out in the field besides your teammates' help. Always add to your abilities and practice them when you get the chance. A shinobi is like good steel, adding multiple skills together like a smith does metals until a powerful warrior is created by the shinobi, just like smith forges the alloy steel. A shinobi also understands his limits and doesn't puff himself up with pretentious pride. Sasuke Uchiha, as the rookie of the year for this promising batch of graduates, this upcoming warning is especially true for you, even though it applies to everyone in this room. Far too many genins have had promising careers cut short because they bit off more than they could chew due to their pride and are now permanent fixtures of their family shrines. You are no longer the top class of the academy. As of this day, you are simply new genins at the very start of your career. Everyone on the force who is not currently sitting on a bleacher in this room is your superior in experience, and likely rank as well. Use this fact to help keep your pride and tempers in check, or an enemy will kill you when you leave the village on a mission. After that chilling note, Rashi began to read off the teams and who the Jonin senseis would be. Naruto caught on to this year's composition pattern once he heard several names that he recognized well. The teams were set up with a heavy hitter, a support member, and a tracker. Naruto gave Rashi full attention when the headmaster called out, Team 10 is composed of Naruto Uzumaki, Sakura Hirano, and Kiba Inuzuka with Fuka Asakawa as the Jonin instructor. You will be meeting your instructor in classroom 312. Once Rashi finished calling out the instructors, he dismissed the new genin to meet their new instructors. There was an immediate rush for the gym door by most of the students. Naruto decided to avoid the crowd, which was on the verge of triggering a fistfight, by walking up the wall of the gym and squeezing through a ventilation window to leave. Rashi was the only one to notice Naruto's means of leaving the room, bringing a small smile to the headmaster's face. Kiba, with Akamaru resting on his head, ran up the stairs to the 3rd level of the school with a grin on his face. There was a big grin on Kiba's face as he said, "Oh yes, Akamaru. We're going to be the first ones to meet our new sensei, just like we're going to be leaders of our new team." Akamaru barked in agreement as Kiba grabbed the doorknob for room 312. Kiba opened the door as Sakura appeared in the stairwell, causing the rambunctious boy to call out, "First one in the room is the best shinobi on the team." He then turned his head to look in the room and step inside. However, Kiba's eyes bulged out in shock when he saw what was inside. Naruto was sitting in the instructor's chair with his feet up on the desk in a lazy manner. Furthermore, Naruto had created half a dozen kage bunshins and had them hinged into amazingly beautiful female models wearing different designer bikinis. Two clones were fanning Naruto with exotic feathered fans. An was behind Naruto looking like she was rubbing his shoulders. One was on the other side of the desk performing a slow dance on one of the student desks. The last two were standing on either side of Naruto, with one apparently holding a bowl full of grapes while the other was serving a martini. In a lazy manner, Naruto looked at Kiba and said, "You were right, Kiba. The first shinobi to be in this room is the best genin on the team. Thank you for recognizing my magnificence, and you will be ecstatic to know that life on the top is good. Oh Sakura, thank you joining us as well." Naruto looked at his clones and said, "My teammates have arrived, ladies, which unfortunately means that our time together is at an end." All of the bunshins let out a sigh of sadness as one. The bunshin that was seemingly holding the bowl of grapes put the bowl down on the teacher's desk and clapped her hands. This bunshin then said in a commanding voice, "You heard the master, ladies. Reverse summon yourself to the mansion at once." The other bunshins dispersed themselves one by one until the former holder of the bowl was left. This bunshin bowed her head and said, "Until we can serve you again, Master Naruto." It then dispersed itself along with the bowl of grapes on the table. Naruto got his feet off of the desk and smirked at his gob-smacked teammates. He then started to chuckle and said, "If only you two could see your faces right at this moment. I mean seriously, I just used a couple of hinged bunshins and you two are completely shocked into silence. Any of us could have done this back in third year, given that we learned this jutsus back in second year. Performing a combo with a regular bunshin and the henge jutsu was possible for an academy student. It just would take a lot of practice that most students wouldn't put into work, just those two jutsus together. Since Naruto used Kage bunshins who then used henge, it actually wasn't a combo in the traditional sense." The sound of Saban flying through the air caused Naruto to drop to the ground while yelling, "Get down!" He rapidly pulled out a shuriken and threw it in the general direction of the incoming Saban before he leapt behind a desk. Naruto pulled the desk down to form a barrier and grabbed a fistful of kunais. His eyes instantly darted to Kiba and Sakura to check on their status. All it took was a split second for him to verify that they had heard his warning and had ducked for cover on the other side of the classroom door. Naruto's eyes then looked for the shuriken he had thrown and saw it near the window where there was a very faint distortion. All three genins then heard the sound of clapping being thrown throughout the room. A joyful and slightly sultry voice then called out from seemingly everywhere. "Very good reactions, you three. The academy instructors didn't mess up in that aspect of your training." A genjutsu ended to reveal an incredibly beautiful woman with long burned red hair wearing a tight-fitting and somewhat scanty outfit that highlighted her natural charms. The woman ended her clapping and then pointed to the shuriken that was 3 inches from her head. "Bit off in your aim, Naruto. You did well for a genin aiming just by sound. However, I still would have been free to kill you if I was an enemy ninja instead of your jonin instructor. I also could have killed you long before Kiba or Sakura showed up because you never detected me hiding my presence with the genjutsu." The jonin turned to look at the duo hiding behind the classroom door and took a step towards them. "Both of you left yourselves wide open to an enemy attack because you fell for Naruto's prank. That should never happen as a ninja. A simple application of genjutsu." There was a split-second pause as Fuka activated a genjutsu on the trio. All three genins were shocked as Fuka's clothes appeared to fade away into smoke. Bits of the smoke started to circle around Fuka's naked and sweaty form, barely protecting her modesty. Fuka walked through the smoke, fully revealing herself to her 3 students as she continued to speak. "Can allow a shinobi to show anything to an enemy that they wish to show." Kiba wasn't paying the slightest bit of attention to what Fuka was saying. All he could think about was the sight before him that put the centerfold he had once seen in a stolen porno magazine to complete shame. Sakura was staring at her sensei in complete shock that a kunoichi would expose herself in such a brazen manner. Naruto knew that Fuka must be casting a genjutsu, and that he should be breaking it. However, something about Fuka was just so enthralling that he couldn't bring himself to end the glorious sight before him. Naruto was able to keep enough wits about him to keep his kunais in his hand and hiding the fact as best he could that he was ready to throw those kunais at Fuka's back at a moment's notice. Fuka gave a sultry smirk as she continued, "The enemy will only see one thing until they are dead." She ended her sentence in a much more hostile tone. Fuka also cancelled her genjutsu to reveal that she was fully clothed and holding a kunai in each hand against Kiba's and Sakura's necks. Fuka pressed against the duo's necks just hard enough to draw a drop of blood on each kunai before jumping behind Naruto. She immediately put a fresh kunai to Naruto's back and said, "Tell me, Naruto. Why shouldn't I just cut you now and declare all 3 of you failures? You have 5 seconds before I draw your blood and you all fail my test." Naruto responded by using a kawarimi with the teacher's chair to appear behind the teacher's desk. He then called out, "Regulation 37, Paragraph 4 of the Jonin Instructor Rules states that no Jonin test of potential genin may begin without informing the potential genin of their status, the test conditions, test requirements, or at least 2 hours of notified prior prep time for the potential genins. You have not told us about your test, its conditions, or the prep time. Thus, you cannot fail us just yet even if you were to draw my blood. Both Sakura and Kiba looked at Naruto in surprise, not knowing what he was talking about or what regulations he was talking about. They then turned to face Fuka, who was chuckling. I have a special dispensation from the Hokage on that regulation, Naruto. After all, the normal test doesn't take into consideration a student with a Kekkei Genkai that grants him the genetic memories of 5 highly elite ninjas, no, does it? You very easily could have told everyone in the class about the Jonin's test to truly determine who goes on to become Genin. Naruto stood with his back against the wall, and he discreetly put a kunai in his offhand with the point aimed at the wall. He kept his nervousness from showing and stated as confidently as he could. You all would know if I told the soul. It would have been impossible for me to pass along that information discreetly in 4 days to all 84 graduates. Especially since I live at the Shinobi Orphans Care Complex, where it would have been very suspicious for me to leave after graduation with the basic training ground provided on campus. Someone would have undoubtedly discovered such an information leaked days ago, and I would be summoned for breaking shinobi secrets. Grandfather Hokage declared years ago that anyone with an active Ima Sophia is bound to keep any and all shinobi secrets their genetic memories inform them about to the same level of a registered shinobi. That means that I'd suffer the same punishments as any ninja for breaking a shinobi secret. The Jonin's final of the Genin is a Class D secret. Both Kiba and Sakura gasped in shock when they heard that news. Sakura blurted out, revealing a Class D secret carries a 500,000 ryo fine and 40 lash penalty with an additional 50,000 ryo and 10 lashes for every person the secret is revealed to by the guilty person. Fuka nodded her head and continued on. Such a penalty for Naruto if he did reveal this information to everyone would land him with a 4,700,000 ryo fine and 880 lashes with a whip like this one in my hand. Fuka then revealed a cat o' nine tails with half a dozen rusty and jagged nails tied onto each tail. Kiba and Sakura both paled at the sight of the diabolical-looking whip. They had never seen a punishment whip before and had thought that the whips mentioned their textbooks for certain punishments were the whips used to get animals to move. The thought of getting one of those whips used on them for breaking certain rules had been the stuff of nightmares for the 2 former students. Now those nightmares looked like pleasant daydreams compared to the image the demonic thing in Fuka's hand was giving them. Naruto shivered slightly at the sight of a Kyuubi whip. His ancestors had never had to suffer from one of those things, and they only had to sparingly use it for punishments of criminal shinobi. Thanks to Ima Sophia, Naruto knew that those things were coated in a special minor poison that heightened the pain one would feel from a lash. Given how well medical jutsus could heal someone, there wouldn't be any muscle damage, or even scars from the whipping after a few weeks. The doctor's healing abilities were why the lashings were made so agonizing. If the pain wasn't agonizing, then a shinobi would soon forget about it, since you had to develop a high pain tolerance to be a successful shinobi. Fuka tapped the Kyuubi whip with a finger and said, As I said, the Hokage gave me a special dispensation because of Naruto's Kekkei Genkai to ensure that his team's test is on the level just like every other team. Naruto is a good academy student who didn't become Rookie of the Year only because of an unexpected oversight in the academy's grading matrix that has been corrected for the future. It is well within the realm of possibility that he could have slipped you two a message between the time of the team announcements and your arrival in this room. This puts me in the position of possibly testing you when you already know how to beat the test without actually having what you need to truly beat the test. The Jonin paused a second for dramatic effect and said, I think I'll be generous and cut you all a deal. If Naruto agrees to receive 60 lashes for the suspicion that he could have spoiled the test, and he doesn't reveal what the test is supposed to be about during the flogging, I will let you all be tested in the regular manner. However, your 2-hour time limit for prep will occur after the whipping, and then the test will begin for the 3 of you. Naruto gulped in shock at that announcement. Even with his healing, 60 lashes from a Kyuubi whip would put him down for the rest of the day. Hell, he'd have to be patched up and taken to see a doctor to help heal. He'd also have to wait until after Fuka's test was passed to go to the doctor, or all 3 of them would flunk. Kiba blurted out, why the hell should Naruto accept such a deal when he's done nothing wrong? 60 lashes with that monstrosity will send him the ER. Fuka turned to Kiba and rebutted, if Naruto goes to the ER after his flogging but before the test is passed, everyone fails. Life is not fair, and it's time all of you accepted that fact. You and Sakura can field dress him to ensure he doesn't die of blood loss. There will be times you'll have to complete a mission with a wounded comrade if you 3 actually join the shinobi forces. Naruto put his kunais away and calmly said, I'll do it. I'll take the 60 lashes if you'll honor your offer with your word as a sworn shinobi of Konoha to stick to the regular regulations for testing prospective genin. The Jonin politely nodded her head and said, I swear, Naruto Uzumaki, that if you make it through all 60 lashes I will honor my agreement and test you 3 according to the regular regulations. Now let's head to the courtyard. One of the throwing posts will do very well in place of a regular whipping post. Wait. Everyone turned to face Sakura, who had quietly spoken up. The young kunoichi to be was obviously trying to keep her courage up as her body was trembling slightly. Sakura turned to look Fuka in the eyes and nervously spoke. I'll take half of those lashes since I'm under suspicion of possessing knowledge that I shouldn't have had. Inner Sakura was screaming that she was utterly crazy for making this offer. However, Sakura doubted that she could pass whatever test this powerful and ruthless kunoichi could throw at them if her strongest teammate was completely out of action. Kiba then cut in, just give Sakura and Naruto 20 lashes each and I'll take the final 20. I'm also a member of this team, so part of the suspicion falls on me as well. Kiba was also thinking he was kind of crazy making an offer like this. However, he was hoping that the 2-hour prep time would give the three of them enough time to be patched up enough to succeed at Fuka's test. Having 2 badly wounded team members or one needing to go to the ER wouldn't allow them to pass. Kiba's mother and sister that the only way one could succeed on a mission was by working with one's teammates. Headmaster Rashi also had hammered that point home in his farewell speech. Fuka nodded her head and said, very well then. Kiba's modification to my deal is accepted. However, now all of you will fail if any of you backs out of this deal. Now follow me to the training posts. Any delays will be seen as you attempted to back out the deal. As Fuka walked out of the classroom, she made sure to keep the QB whip in easy view of the trio who followed after her looking like condemned men. Each step through the formerly happy halls of the academy filled the prospective genins with nervousness and fear that they had made a terrible choice. Once outside the academy building, Fuka led the trio to shuriken posts and had each member of the trio stand in front of a post. Fuka then ordered in a commanding voice, team discipline is about to commence. Remove all clothing covering your backs and stand in front of the shuriken posts with your arms wrapped around the posts. Sakura, all clothing includes a training bra if you are wearing one. You all have 1 minute to remove the items of clothing mentioned before you will be deemed to be reneging on your deal with me starting now. Naruto took off his ninjato followed by his shirt. He then grabbed the shuriken post like he was instructed with his bare back to Fuka. Kiba put Akamaru down on the ground and started to take off his upper clothing. Sakura waited a second, but quickly followed orders once she saw that Kiba and Naruto weren't looking at her. All 3 potential genin were ready for their lashings before the time limit. Fuka uncoiled the QB whip and gave it a test strike on the ground. All 3 prospective genins flinched at the sound of the whip, but they kept their hands wrapped around the posts. Fuka then said in her commanding tone, adding a touch of killing intent to her words to really make the trio sweat. This team of potential genin has been found under suspicion of breaking a Class D shinobi secret, earning the primary subject of suspicion 60 lashes. Upon teammates' request, the sentence has been split among all 3 members. This disciplinary punishment is to be carried out on a cold day in hell. Naruto, Kiba, and Sakura all blinked when they felt the killing intent vanish while their fear and dread was cut in half. Kiba nervously piped up, "What was that, sensei?" Fuka sealed away the QB whip and jumped behind the shuriken pots so the trio could see her. There was a much friendlier look on her face as she spoke in a soft and kind manner. There will be no punishment for the 3 of you. There will also be no Jonin's test according to the normal regulations like I promised, as I never gave Naruto the 60 lashes. You 3 passed my test. Now put on your clothes and sit by me so I can explain things in more detail. The trio quickly got their clothes back on and then sat in a circle around Fuka on the throwing grounds. Once Sakura, who was the last to get dressed due to making sure that Kiba and Naruto couldn't see anything naughty, sat down, Fuka began to speak. The Ninja Academy gives you all the skills you need to start your careers off as shinobi. However, the Academy cannot really test you all for teamwork, critical thinking, self-sacrifice, and willingness to face danger like you'll need to be able to do in order to succeed on dangerous missions. That is where the Jonin's final comes in to test to see if you all have enough of these qualities right now to become genin. The kunoichi unsealed the tea set and poured all 4 of them a glass of tea. She then politely said with a refined air, "Drink this. It's a special blend that helps to calm one down, and all of you will need it after passing that final." Fuka took a small sip first of the tea before her students followed her example. She then put her cup down and continued her lecture. Naruto with his Kekkai Genkai is a snag to the normal Jonin final as he knows what is being tested and what needs to be shown in order to pass. The Hokage felt that there was too great of a chance that any team he was on would work towards the test instead of genuinely being able to pass it. Oh, don't make that face, Naruto. None of us thought you'd spill the beans on the test beforehand. However, you could give too many hints during the test and you'd be actively working to ensure that everyone passed the test knowing what is required. This would normally be a good thing for a ninja since in our profession we need to seize any advantage that we can give ourselves. But this test is an exception, as if you don't have these abilities to a certain level you could cause a catastrophe on a mission that would probably result in someone's death. So the Hokage decided that you 3 couldn't have the prep time, or even be told what your test was, especially so that Naruto could be tested without realizing he was being tested. Trust me when I say that it wasn't easy to come up with this test for you 3. I spent almost a month crafting it. Sakura spoke up after finishing her tea. Could you explain the test for me, sensei, and how we demonstrated those skills? I want to make sure I fully understood everything about the test. Inside her head, inner Sakura was ranting that she didn't understand a single thing about Fuka's test. Fuka nodded her head and quietly refilled Sakura's teacup. Certainly, Sakura, since all of you are now my genin students, I'm free to discuss the test. My test focuses on teamwork, self-sacrifice, and especially willingness to face danger. Critical thinking is involved in it, but it is not a focus of the test as I find it to be the easiest trait of the 4 to drill into genins. Now to explain things by the numbers, your teamwork was tested by whether or not you all were willing to make a sacrifice in order to ensure that the team got a fair chance to be tested. Naruto demonstrated this by agreeing to the blatantly unfair punishment, while you and Kiba demonstrated this by being willing to take part of the punishment on yourselves. This directly feeds into the self-sacrifice part of the test, as anyone can see that a QB whip can inflict absolutely horrendous amounts of damage. I also placed a minor genjutsu on the 3 of you that enhance your feelings of fear and dread at the sight of the whip. Your willingness to face danger was tested by the 3 of you following me here and standing at the posts ready to endure a flogging. It's easy to say you'll make a sacrifice for others, but it's an entirely different thing to actually make the sacrifice. Naruto then asked, what about the critical thinking? Was it me realizing that having 2 teammates face a mission that they know about was better than me facing a mission I didn't have much information about? The kunoichi nodded her head as she answered her student, for your part, yes, Naruto. Sakura and then Kiba demonstrated their critical thinking by realizing that having a team member down in critical condition would almost assure them a failure. So they did the only rational choice they could make in the circumstances they were in, and tried to reduce the burden you would have had to deal with. Fuka checked to see that her students had finished their tea and resealed the tea set away. She then stood up and said, as I said, we are officially Genin Team 10. From now on we will be meeting 6 days a week at 8 a.m. on Training Ground 10. Our team schedule will be as follows. From 8 until noon we will have a warm-up and light practice. 12 to 12:20 will be a quick team lunch. After lunch our schedule will be a bit more varied. We will be alternating between doing D-rank missions one day and heavier practice the next day during the afternoon. Our daily practice will end at 6 p.m., or when you have completed all of your assigned tasks for the day. It will be the later of the 2 that determines when you get off and not the earlier of the 2, so keep this fact in mind. The 7th day of the week will be your day off to relax and have fun. Don't even think about training or studying on this day because you need the break to avoid burnout or injury. Now, do you have any questions? The trio was silent for a moment, and then Kiba pipped up, was that genjutsu really how you look naked? Sakura quickly smacked Kiba on the back of head for that comment. Ouch, what the hell was that for Sakura? Kiba asked while rubbing the back of his head. A tick mark appeared on Sakura's forehead. She then angrily said, do you even have to ask why I hit you, Kiba? What on earth would possess you to ask sensei a question like that? Fuka started to chuckle, drawing all of her students' attention. She shook her head slightly and said, the answer to your question is obvious, Sakura. Kiba here is simply a young boy on the verge of becoming a teenager and unable to deal with all of the hormones his body is producing. Genjutsu is not my forte like ninjutsu, but a relatively simple one like I used before cutting you two is within my abilities. Yes, Kiba, that is how I look without any clothes on, and you shouldn't be shocked at all about it, Sakura. My sexy figure is simply another weapon for me to use. So what if enemies see my glorious and desirable form? Their lust will paralyze them, and then a simple cut allows me to collect the viewing fee of their lives. Or if I so choose, I can drain all of the chakra from their bodies with a single fatal kiss. Both Naruto and Kiba let out small shivers of fear when they heard Fuka state that. Kiba became really afraid of Fuka deciding to collect the viewing fee from him. Naruto was nervous because Fuka was throwing off his normal expectations. He was pretty sure that his father would have known where her skills were over a decade ago as Hokage, but he hadn't called up those memories. Chunins and Jonins typically focused their skills into different basic types that could be identified. These types were useful for helping to assign shinobi to a mission, and using a traditional build ensured that one could get training from others specializing in the same manner. Fuka was throwing Naruto off because she was showing the signs of a seductress kunoichi, and the ninjutsu was at odds with that build. Seductress kunoichi typically favored genjutsu or poison as means to attack so they could get in, remove their target, and get out without causing a commotion. Ninjutsu was typically loud, obvious, and announced that one was a ninja. It was great for an assault or heavy support build where fighting power was paramount, but typically terrible for mission involving stealth. Fuka then said, I need to be off to inform the Hokage about our team becoming official. You three have the rest of the day off, and I suggest that you enjoy it. You're not getting another day off until next Monday. Fuka then vanished in a swirl of leaves. Fuka walked into the Hokage's tower, and quickly made her way to the Hokage's office where Hiruzen was sitting behind his desk talking with Kakashi. The duo's conversation came to end when Fuka walked in and bowed her head to the Hokage. She then formally said, Jonin Fuka Asakawa reporting in from testing perspective Genin Team 10. Genin hopefuls Naruto Uzumaki, Sakura Hirano, and Kiba Inuzuka passed the previously submitted test plan for Team 10 by passing the first test. The makeup test was not needed. I hereby declare their application into the Shinobi Forces accepted and their Shinobi profiles to be on active status. Hiruzen nodded his head and said, "Understood, Jonin Asakawa. As of this moment, Team 10 is now an official team within the regular Shinobi Forces. You are Team 10's commander and will remain as such until either all 3 genins on your team become Chunin or your services are needed elsewhere on a more permanent basis. Their training is in your hands, their Jonin instructor. May you ensure through your training that they become strong members of the Shinobi Forces." With the ritualized activation of a new genin team out of the way, Fuka spoke. "My team's training will begin tomorrow following the basic training plan I submitted with my request to command a genin team. Modifications to the plan will be made as the trio's progress requires and will be filed in my monthly reports. Are there any further instructions or inquiries you have for my team? If not, I would like to leave so I can file my initial report on the team." A pained look appeared on Hiruzen's face for a split second before he hardened behind his Hokage face. He then said, "There is one extra order that you'll have to follow, Jonin Asakawa, if it becomes necessary. You are hereby removed from the General Suzaku Directive and placed on permanent standby for a specific Suzaku Directive with regards to Genin Naruto Uzumaki. This change in your directives will remain in effect until you no longer qualify for the Suzaku Directive, you are reassigned to another team, Naruto Uzumaki is reassigned to another team, or it is no longer necessary for Naruto Uzumaki to be placed under the Suzaku Directive. Is that understood?" Fuka gave a quick nod of her head showing her understanding. She had been expecting this modification in her Suzaku Directive ever since she found out that Naruto would be one of her potential students. Anything else wouldn't make sense given that the team had one confirmed carrier of a useful Kekkei Genkai and a Kunoichi currently under that directive. The thought of the order didn't bother Fuka because the directive would only activate if she massively screwed up training Team 10, allowing them to get into danger. So it wouldn't be an issue as long as she did her job like she was supposed to do. Just as Fuka was about to ask if there was anything more, Hiruzen dropped the bomb on her. Also, there will be a modification to the Suzaku Directive. Genin Sakura Hirano is to be given the training necessary to act as your backup in regards to Naruto Uzumaki's situation with the Suzaku Directive once she meets the minimum necessary physical requirements for the directive's purpose. Kakashi looked at Hiruzen with a look of surprise at the Hokage's declaration. However, both men were pulled to look at Fuka, who was barely containing her killing intent. "I formally protest this, sir. The Suzaku Directive is limited to 16-year-old Chunin rank Kunoichis or higher for extremely valid reasons. Forcing a 12, almost 13-year-old genin to fulfill the directive is just asking for problems." Personally, Hiruzen agreed with Fuka and hoped that this addition was never needed. However, planning for a worst-case scenario was part of the burdens of leadership, and he was old friends with this particular burden. "Your protest has been noted and dismissed, Jonin Asakawa. My only advice for you is to ensure your training is enough that the Suzaku Directive does not need to go into effect. If things do take an unexpected turn for the worse, ensure that you are in a position to fulfill the directive so that your genin student does not have to do so in your place." The Hokage allowed part of his disgust and weariness to show on his face as his voice softens. "Off the record, Fuka, I really don't want to force Sakura into fulfilling the Suzaku Directive. She's far too young to be forced into such a position, and fulfilling the directive at her age has a strong possibility of killing her career as an active ninja. Sadly, as the Hokage, I need to weigh the needs of Konoha and the Land of Fire in light of Naruto falling without a replacement. We need to keep the Uzumaki around in order to keep the Kyuubi contained. If there isn't another Uzumaki available to seal the Kyuubi into when Naruto dies, then we might as well start the evacuation of Konoha, because once it reforms, the Kyuubi will attack us. Jiraiya might, just might, have the abilities to seal the beast again. However, without an Uzumaki we won't have anywhere safe to seal the beast." A hard look crossed Fuka's magnificent face as she spoke. "I'll inform Sakura because it's my orders, sir. However, I will ensure that such measures do not have to be taken." With that said, the Jonin vanished in a swirl of leaves. Kakashi turned to look at the worn Hokage and stated, "You should have let me train Naruto like I requested. I would have ensured that he would be strong enough to not need such considerations, sir. We didn't have to have such plans for Kushina or Mito." Ever since Obito's betrayal had been revealed, Kakashi had stopped being so carefree like he had been. The habits that Kakashi had picked up in honor of his one-time friend had been dropped. The famed Jonin hadn't reverted to his by-the-book attitude that he had as a child. However, there was an edge and hardness about Kakashi that he hadn't shown before the Uchiha purge had happened. Hiruzen looked over at Kakashi and felt a bit of sorrow for the young man. Everyone who knew Kakashi knew that he blamed himself for Obito's betrayal. Kakashi was convinced that Obito's betrayal would never have happened if he had been able to rescue his friend all those years ago on that fateful mission. It didn't matter that the inquiry board had ruled that there was nothing within Kakashi's abilities to do to help Obito after reviewing the silver-haired Jonin's memories of the incident. Even the second inquiry board that had been set up after Obito's reveal as the betrayer exonerated Kakashi. That inquiry board had ruled that Obito's survival was due to an unknown third party who had for some reason saved Obito through an unknown jutsu, bringing him to facilities that could ensure his survival and turn him against Konoha. The Hokage took a puff of his pipe and then quipped back to his subordinate. In case it somehow slipped your memory, Kakashi, Kushina and Mito were both women. Trying to make plans to continue their line if they fell was pointless because they didn't have the necessary equipment to impregnate a kunoichi. Naruto can, so it would be stupid to not plan for such a situation given the stakes involved. I'm dearly hoping that such contingencies will not be needed, and if for some reason it is necessary that Fuka can handle the task instead of Sakura. Planning for the worst and hoping for the best is a burden of my position. Hiruzen then gave Kakashi a sad smile as he continued on. I know you wanted to teach Naruto to try and repay Minato. But you need to take a step back and look at everything objectively. Naruto knows everything Minato did thanks to Ima Sophia, so how much can you really teach him given all of the help and advice Minato gave you to turn you into the ninja you are today? You have many more jutsus now than when Minato was alive, but the core of your skills and outlook is still the same. Fuka's knowledge of jutsus is almost as vast as your own, and she has a number of skills related to infiltration and espionage that neither you nor anyone in Naruto's ancestral memories has. She can help Naruto unlock the full abilities resting in his blood and help him to add new ones to pass on. On the other hand, you are a very good possible teacher for your own students, and possibly the best one we have for young Sasuke. That young boy has great promise as a ninja, but he can easily be led down a dark path in his quest to restore the Uchiha clan's honor. You're also the only one who can teach Sasuke how to use the Sharingan if he activates his Kekkei Genkai, since Itachi doesn't have enough time to fully train his brother, and the two of them are effectively ostracized from the rest of their clan. I'm also hoping that your shared pasts of dealing with parental decisions that cause you both a great deal of problems will help you reach Sasuke, even though there is a world of difference between the two incidents. Kakashi had read the full report on his potential students and understood Hiruzen's decisions. His solid skills at tracking would help Hinata, who had been swapped into the traditional position of the top kunoichi for team balancing. Sakura was the top kunoichi of the year for the academy, and having her on a team with Sasuke and Shikamaru created a major deficiency for said team in terms of tracking and detection. It was also hoped by some that Kakashi would be able to get Shikamaru to shake off his lazy nature, just like Kakashi had gotten rid of his habitual lateness that had previously caused him to constantly court demotion. Kakashi doubted that though, as it was very unlikely that Shikamaru had a dead friend who would turn out to be alive and a massive traitor. His prior experiences working with Hyugas and Naras made him a good fit for training Hinata and Shikamaru in addition to the skills he offered as a sensei. The silver-haired Jonin let out a sigh, knowing that Hiruzen was correct, that he was a better fit as Sasuke's teacher rather than as Naruto's. Still didn't change the fact that Kakashi wanted to teach Naruto. It had been something he had been hoping to have for years as a way to both connect with Naruto and to repay Minato for everything the man had done for him. Kakashi had been too young and his career took him out of the village too often to make a strong case for him to adopt Naruto after Minato and Kushina died. The Shinobi Orphans Care Complex was able to provide Naruto with a safer and more stable environment to grow up in than Kakashi ever could. Besides, it would have drawn more attention to Naruto from foreign spies if the Yandame's only surviving student took in a newborn baby. Kakashi bowed his head to Hiruzen and said, "Well, I must be off now. I think I've waited long enough to meet my team in order to test their patience. I'll see you when it's time for me to report on my prospective team's status." As Kakashi was arriving at the Ninja Academy, Kiba, Sakura, and Naruto were leaving. Naruto had invited both teammates out for a small celebratory meal, and they both had accepted. Kiba spoke as the trio of new genin reached the outer grounds of the academy. "Hey Naruto, what was that stuff that sensei was saying about your Kekkei Genkai? She was saying something about you having the memories of a bunch of ninjas in your head?" Naruto stopped in his tracks, looked around to check out his surroundings, and then motioned for Sakura and Kiba to follow him to a more secluded area on the edge of the academy. Once they were alone, Naruto answered back. "Ima Sophia does more than simply give me very good recall of memories like is known around Konoha. The specifics of my Kekkei Genkai were kept secret while I was at the academy because it was deemed that I'd become too big of a risk for becoming a kidnapping target if Ima Sophia's abilities were too widely known before I had enough skill to defend myself. Since I'm now a genin, Ima Sophia's abilities are under less secrecy. However, the Hokage doesn't want my Kekkei Genkai advertised until I've become a chunin. At the moment, Ima Sophia's full abilities are a Class E secret. Is that understood?" Both of Naruto's teammates nodded their heads. The instructors at the academy had taught all potential ninjas about the odd dichotomy ninjas had between the need to keep their abilities secret to accomplish missions and the need to advertise their abilities in order to get missions. This had led to a discussion on the unofficial Class E secret. This was something that, while technically not hidden from the public and thus not an official military secret, was regarded as something that was better talked about away from listening ears. There was no official penalty for carelessly talking about anything in the unofficial Class E category. However, ninjas who couldn't keep a Class E secret tended to get the worst and least glamorous assignments way more than they should by pure random chance. The young shinobi then explained his Kekkei Genkai. Ima Sophia literally means blood wisdom, and that's a good description of what it does. My Kekkei Genkai records all of the bearer's memories and passes them on to the person's children. It also creates a copy of the child's other parents' memories and passes those along. These inherited memories get updated each time a child touches their parents. Inherited memories are easy to access once the Kekkei Genkai fully activates like it did for me. Naruto paused for a second to point to his blue within blue eyes. There is perfect recall with memories accessed via Ima Sophia. These memories also cannot be removed via any known jutsu since they are recorded genetically along with being recorded in my brain. With practice, one can also access their own memories with the same clarity as their inherited memories. Kiba blinked his eyes and then pointed at Naruto with a bit of outrage. That's just bullshit. You mean to tell me that I busted my ass trying to study all those years in the academy while you got to coast along on your parents' memories? I suppose you also have dozens of high-ranking jutsus at your fingertips that you can pull off whenever you want while I have to beg to learn a measly C-rank jutsu from mom. Naruto shook his head. I still had to study at the academy because something's changed in the lessons since my parents went to school or were even alive, Kiba. I'll admit I know quite a lot of powerful jutsus thanks to my ancestors. However, I can't use most of them because I haven't put in the practice necessary to use them as I'm just a 12-year-old. My body wouldn't be able to handle the stress of those jutsus right now. Besides, Ima Sophia does have its downsides since I have all of my parents and my forebears with their partners' memories down the line that Ima Sophia has been passed down while being unable to remove any memory. Kiba gave Naruto a quizzical look and said, and just how is that a downside, Naruto? In a deadpan manner, Naruto answered his stubbornly thick teammate. I have inherited memories that I would rather not have. For example, my introduction to sex ed was me accidentally calling up my parents' memories of the night I was conceived and recalling both mom and dad's memories of that night. Those memories were in perfect detail. Sakura cut in at this point. I think it's safe to say that Naruto paid a serious price for any advantages his Kekkei Genkai gave him in school, Kiba. In the back of Sakura's mind, her inner self was much more vocal on the subject. Her inner self was wondering why Naruto didn't kill himself after living through those memories. There were some things that were just worse than death. Kiba nodded his head in agreement, shivering at the thought of experiencing something like that. He then stated, I take back what I said, Naruto. But on the plus side, does this mean you know who your folks were? Naruto nodded his head and then said, yes, I do. However, my precise lineage is currently classified as a class A secret until I become at least a Chunin. The Hokage feels my lineage plus my Kekkei Genkai would once again make me a prime kidnapping target for enemies looking to gain intelligence on Konoha. Once I'm a Chunin, my skills should be enough to deter overt kidnapping attempts. Left unsaid was the fact that he'd still have to be on guard for enemy kunoichis trying to seduce or trick him into fathering a child for them. Sakura then shifted the conversation by asking, so which restaurant are we going to go to in order to celebrate our officially becoming a genin team? We never decided where we are going. This quickly started an animated debate among the trio over where they were going to eat. All members of the team argued for their favorite restaurant, and finally agreed to go to a place that served all of their favorite foods. Team training started at 8 a.m. just like Fuka said it would. Fuka hit the ground running by giving her students 5-pound wrist weights and 10-pound leg weights. She had a similar, although much heavier, set of weights that she put on her wrists and legs as well. There was also a small weight set up for Akamaru to wear. Fuka then proceeded to lead the team through a 2-hour-long aerobic exercise marathon, switching between laps around the training ground, jumping jacks, sit-ups, push-ups, and other cardio exercises. She refused to let the team stop or slow down as she mixed things up to exercise every muscle. Any attempts to use chakra to enhance or maintain one's performance was quickly spotted, and Fuka soon threatened to add fines to anyone who cheated on this portion of the exercise. The warm-up exercise ended at 10 a.m. and Fuka gave her students a 5-minute rest period to have some water. Sakura was sitting on the ground greedily drinking from her water canteen. Kiba was panting a bit as he had some water. Naruto wiped away some of his sweat and had a few sips of his water. Sakura wasn't used to doing exercises at this intensity and length with weights. Kiba was in better physical condition than Sakura, and he was used to lugging around some extra weight from Akamaru. His mean dog wasn't as heavy as his weights, but the practice helped. Naruto just needed some water, and then he was as good as new with a little extra body odor thrown in. After a 5-minute break, Fuka put the trio through an hour-long practice of their taijutsu forms. Fuka was standing opposite of her students so that she could observe their practice while she did her own and offer any critiques when needed. After the taijutsu practice there was a half-hour of shuriken and kunai throwing with Fuka running the trio through speed, accuracy, and distance drills. Once the ranged weaponry practice was over, the trio had to do close-quarter weapons practice. During this period Kiba and Sakura used their kunais like combat knives while Naruto was allowed to practice with his ninjato. However, Fuka did inform Naruto that he would need to train at least 2 days a week with a plain kunai since he wouldn't always have access to a sword while on missions. Noon came and Fuka said, "Alright students. It is time to eat. Take off your weights and head over to that tree so we can eat." She removed her weights and placed them on the ground before heading to the tree she had pointed at. Sakura and Naruto quickly joined Fuka with Kiba taking a little longer because he had to take Akamaru's weights off as well. Fuka sat with her back to the trunk of the tree with her students sitting before her as all of them ate. Once Kiba had eaten half of his lunch, he asked a question. "Hey sensei? Why did you have us take the weights off? I thought that with weights you were supposed to wear them all the time for maximum effect." Fuka shook her head. "That is a foolish notion Kiba started by a few storytellers who only have half of the understanding of weight training. Your body needs to rest from the weights. If you just started to use the weights all of the time your muscles and bones would eventually start to break down. Now you can condition yourself to use weights for a much longer period of time. The Mato clan is rather well known in taijutsu circles for their conditioning to wear heavy weights often. However, such conditioning takes months to do and has to be handled very carefully to ensure that the person undergoing conditioning doesn't hurt themselves. Even with the conditioning, it's stupid for someone to wear weights 24/7 disregarding the potential health problems. We use weights to enhance our abilities. Someone who fights with their weights on is not fighting at their full potential because the weight is hindering them. The extra weight also messes up your reaction times, as you no doubt noticed with your drop in accuracy during practice today. If you don't train without the weights as well, your reaction time and general fighting ability will drop because your body won't know how to react properly without the weight anymore. This means a hypothetical ninja who trains with weights 24/7 cannot fully utilize their full power because their training has gotten them just used to fighting with their weights, which are a handicap in a fight. Such a stupid ninja is nothing more than a corpse that hasn't been buried yet. The weights will be part of our training because they help you if you know how to go about using them properly. What we did this morning will be our regular morning routine. On practice days, you will use the weights the entire time since we have afternoon training without the weights. On mission days, you will use the weights for half of the session, switching between the general physical exercise and the more specific exercises. Sakura let out a sigh of exhaustion and muttered, "I knew that being a genin would require training like this. I would have started using weights back in the academy." Naruto shook his head and replied, "No, you wouldn't have, Sakura. Weights like we use today are forbidden to be sold to any civilian under the age of 15 due to a general health regulation from the daimyo's court. If you somehow got an older relative to buy you a pair, the pair would have been confiscated by the academy instructors if they caught you using them. There would have been simply too great of a chance of you hurting yourself or causing problems for your future physical development for you to use them while you were the academy since you were too young. Even now, we're only allowed to use weights because of 2 reasons. First, we've proven to have sufficient physical strength to use them safely thanks to passing the genin physical test. Second, we are using these weights under the supervision of a trained superior who knows how to use them." Fuka nodded her head and continued from what Naruto had said. "Naruto here is perfectly correct. I will be taking the training weights home with me after all of our training sessions. I trust you 3 as well as any jonin can trust their new genin students. However, I also know just how tempting it can be for a genin to try and push their training as far as possible. I did that myself a few times back when I was a genin." Fuka then pulled out a tea set and poured herself a cup while offering everyone a cup of tea as well. Once lunch was over, the trio of genin expected to be thrown into another round of exercise. However, Fuka surprised them by telling them to leave the weights off and sit down for a lecture. The jonin stood in front of her students and calmly explained, "There is a certain amount of theoretical knowledge that all genin need to know in order to be successful as shinobi. This is in addition to what you are taught back in the academy. Also, shinobi need to know how to apply what they have learned to come up with a plan of action. Your previous senseis often repeated that your mind is the greatest weapon you can have, and they were not trying to pad their lecture time by saying this. We will go over these theoretical aspects after lunch on training days so that you can continue to learn while your bodies rest a bit more from the morning exercise. For today, our lecture will be on teamwork with a focus on coordinating a team's actions in combat. It is one thing for you to say that you need to work together, and it is a different thing to actually work together. Part of working together is practicing together or going on missions together. This gives you the experience to anticipate each other's actions, and to know just how capable every member of the team is at different tasks. It won't be your responsibility for a while, But you must keep in mind who is good at what when it comes time to select tasks. A mission can be lost if, say, a heavy hitter is assigned as a scout even though his or her tracking skills are poor. Teams who have trained or worked together will know who is good at what. Sometimes, teams have to be put together quickly for one reason or another. Why this happens isn't important for our lecture now. What is important is how to work together in the best possible manner so that your lack of experience working or training together doesn't create too big of a liability. Later in your careers, you might team up with a shinobi who had developed a reputation for a certain style of fighting, so you will not go into the situation blind as to their abilities. This will likely not happen until you are chunin or jonin, since only the strongest ninjas develop a reputation for a certain style of fighting and are not quickly cut down because of it. At your current level, one of the quickest ways to learn how a new teammate would fight is to look at their known background. Ninjas from shinobi clans typically favor a certain way of fighting. Some clans are well known, like the Inuzuka clan that Kiba is from. Anyone working with or fighting in Inuzuka would expect most of the Inuzuka's fighting style to revolve around their dogs and various jutsus to augment close-range fighting. Other clans are less well known, such as the Uzumaki clan, which has faded from popular knowledge due to the fall of Yuzin nearly 2 generations ago. This kind of situation makes it harder for you to know immediately what an ally is likely to excel in, but it does offer the advantage of your enemies being less likely to know as well. Shinobi from civilian backgrounds are harder to get information this way since they are blank tablets as far as family fighting expectations. In the case of someone like Sakura, the best source of quick information is to find out who trained them. If you know who their primary teacher was, you can get an idea in what they've been trained in. However, the best way for several shinobi who haven't worked together before to build teamwork rapidly for an immediate mission is to have a short discussion about their abilities and stick to the standard formations. The standard formations you were taught about in the academy, and the more advanced ones you will be taught when you progress in rank, are such because they work. They may not work as well as a specialized formation made by a group that knows each other. But everyone will know what to do and what to expect, which is a key part of teamwork on the battlefield. Briefing each other on your abilities will let every member of the team know what to generally expect. You don't have to list every jutsu and what they all do in detail. That would take way too much time. However, you don't want your temporary teammates to be killed because a jutsu you use seemed to come out of left field and surprise them, giving an enemy an opening. Fuka paused for a moment to let what she had said sink in. After a moment passed, she saw Sakura get ready to speak up. The jonin held out her hand to silence the incoming questions before she started to speak again. I will give you all an example of explaining your abilities, since none of you know what I currently can do. I specialize in infiltration and rapid assaults on enemy targets. My ninjutsu abilities are varied, covering all 5 of the basic elements. In combat, I specialize in using ninjutsu at range while using taijutsu up close to complement some of my close-range jutsus. I often use a close-range jutsu called Shurikei Seppun to drain an enemy's chakra and acquire information about their jutsus. Additionally, I often combo this jutsu with Shiki Tenshin, which allows me to fight using special clones known as Norawa Rishurtai Bunshins while my real body is safely protected inside a special seal. This makes it look like I can take mortal wounds without being killed, greatly unnerving any enemy. Now, do you have any questions? Sakura spoke first. Why is one of your jutsus known as the Cursed Corpse Clone? Fuka's face hardened as she explained, I won't go into too much detail about the creation of the Norawa Rishurtai Bunshins unless I actually teach any of you that hijitsu, and that is not likely to happen. All I will say is that I need to prepare the Norawa Rishurtai Bunshins ahead of time in order to use them, and that I need to use animal parts in part of the process of creating the bunshin. I, like my sensei line that has passed down this jutsu, use parts of pigs to make these bunshin. However, back when this jutsu was created, one of the original inventors of the jutsu became infamous for using the corpses of her victims to create new bunshins. Hence the name of the jutsu. Fuka was not going to say anything more about her jutsus than what she said unless she was taking someone on as an apprentice beyond that of a regular genin student. One of her fellow students to the master that taught her these hijitsus had talked to Orochimaru about the Norawa Rishurtai Bunshin in detail. Those talks were supposed to be a key piece in that Fushur Tensei jutsu Orochimaru had been working on developing when he escaped Konoha. That Orochimaru was trying to develop a jutsu to transfer his soul into another person was an A-rank secret at the moment. The sensei of Team 10 only knew this secret because she was the only living person at the time with knowledge of the Norawa Rishurtai and several other jutsus that Orochimaru was using as the base to start developing the Fushur Tensei. She had been called in as the closest thing Konoha had to an expert to examine Orochimaru's notes on the Fushur Tensei. What she saw made her sick that her hijitsus were being perverted in such a manner. Fuka was also concerned because from what she could see, Orochimaru might actually be on track to creating a jutsu that would transfer his soul. Fuka refocused the conversation on teamwork and continued her lecture for another 20 minutes. Once the lecture was over, she proceeded to teach her students the D-rank jutsu Doton, Shinjuzanshu. This ninjutsu would be very useful to help her students attack enemies, and would serve as a base for many more advanced jutsus that involved Doton. This would be the first in a cycle of D-ranked jutsu from each of the 5 primary elements that Fuka planned to try and teach her students before the first month was up. All 3 genins could perform the jutsu by the time training was called for the day. However, only Naruto was able to do it fast enough to be useful in a fight, and even that wasn't good enough for Fuka to say Naruto would be able to practice another jutsu. Team 10 reported to their training field on time and preformed the morning exercises just as Fuka said they would yesterday. After a quick lunch, the team headed to the Hokage Tower to get their first mission. There was energy about Team 10 as they headed for the tower. Most of the energy was coming from Kiba and Akamaru, who were pumped to be doing ninja missions for real instead of playing ninja with their friends. Sakura was more reserved as she walked, but there was a slight bounce in her step and a smile on her face. She was just as excited as Kiba, she just could keep it quiet better. Fuka and Naruto had knowing smirks that they shared with each other, and not with their teammates. Once Team 10 got to the Hokage Tower, Fuka led them down a hall to the mission assignment room. This was the room where regular missions that were free for anyone to grab either individually or as custom group were given. Missions where the client had specifically asked and paid a premium a particular team were handled by someone in the next room over who would send out messengers for the team in question. Missions requiring a pre-selected team were typically high-ranking missions and handled by the Hokage in his office. Both Sakura and Kiba were surprised to Hiruzen sitting at the main table handing out missions alongside several of the administrative chunin. Fuka wasn't surprised since she was used to the Hokage coming down from his office to man that post the first week after genin graduations. Naruto knew that it was a tradition that was started in the middle of his great-grandfather Tobirama's reign. During the Shodais and the first part of the Nidame's rule, the administration of Konoha had been done in a smaller building known as the Hokage's Hall. That building had been a large open area with a small half-wall semi-enclosed area for the Hokage to work in so everyone could see and interact with the Hokage at any time. The administration of Konoha grew rapidly back then as the concept of shinobi villages strengthened, causing more shinobi clans and civilians seeking training in the Land of Fire to join Konoha. Once the Hokage Hall was too small to handle everything, the Hokage Tower was built, resulting in the need to have a separate office for the Hokage. Tobirama had wanted to keep a similar design to his brother's Hokage Hall. However, it just wasn't practical to keep the same layout due to information security concerns and ease of movement. Tobirama didn't want to become isolated from his ninjas, so he started coming down to personally assign missions for the week that the new genin graduated. It let him get to know the new shinobi and keep a benevolent eye on the more senior members of the shinobi force that were too low to regularly interact with him. Hiruzen and Minato had also adopted this practice during their times as Hokage.